Welcome back to another edition of the Rodcast. Yes, thank God it is the Friday edition of the Rodcast. A freak flag, feel good, fake it till you make it. Ric Flair, woo! Football 512 Friday edition of the Rodcast. Yes, plenty of football to discuss on the show. Got football to talk about last night. Told you it was going to be a barn burner last night. That's exactly what we got between the Ravens and the Bengals. We'll get into that. We'll also talk about the upcoming game this weekend for the Longhorns versus the Florida Gators. We'll break that down. Also go behind the burnt orange curtain next segment and continue to look at that matchup. We'll also look at the latest availability report for the Longhorns and for the Florida Gators. Sark spoke to the media yesterday. We'll talk about what Sark had to say about the upcoming opponent for the Longhorns. Also, we'll get more into that Jonte Cook news that broke at the end of the show yesterday. Jonte Cook and the Longhorns mutually agreeing to part ways. Sark clarified that yesterday as well. We'll also talk about some of the other college football action happening this weekend. Lots of NFL news, notes, and nuggets to address. Texans got a big one coming up this weekend versus the Detroit Lions. We'll talk about that. That may be the hottest team currently in the NFL. We'll get into the Lions and the Texans. Cowboys, of course, we'll talk about their matchup coming up versus the Eagles, even though you won't see Dak Prescott in that matchup. Still not sure if you're going to see CeeDee Lamb in that matchup either. So we'll talk about what's going on with the Cowboys. Other news, notes, and nuggets from around the league. I'll tell you what matchup I'm most excited about to watch in the NFL weekend. We'll also talk about the upcoming draft just a little bit. I saw that there are a couple of positions that are supposed to be considered the deepest positions in the upcoming NFL draft, and there are Longhorn ties to that position. So we'll talk about that too. Lots to get into. We got your usual favorites. We got Rod's rant. We got who said that. We got what the facts, what the stats. We got it all coming up on the show. Before we do any of that, let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. Got a hustler spirit, period. Not sure what he's paid. The damn show, the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. It is our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It's Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Friday morning. I think people could probably relate to this. Of Friday morning, wake up, and you try and be in a good mood. It's a Friday morning. Get your day going. You're rolling. Like, okay, things are going. Driving to the office. Catch the lights. Everything's going. And I'm like, all right, it's gonna be a good day. Good day. I get here. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot to send Rod the cut up audio from the media availability yesterday. It's all right, though. Okay. I uploaded it, so it'll be here at the office. I did it. I cut it up in my house yesterday. So I already did it, but I just it was one of those things where I did it all, put the upload, and then I got up from my desk, and then from that point on, ADD brain, it's like not one thought about it from that point on, right? Until this morning.
Yeah. Hey.
And so I was like, okay. But I was like, okay, I did it. I go to look where I uploaded to, and it was not in there. And I was like, oh no. So I had to drive back to my house.
Oh no.
And turn on my computer. My computer turns on and it goes, you sure you want to upload this?
Oh no.
Yes. And then it uploads it. So I drive back to the office.
Oh, you had to go all the way back. Oh, see, I didn't realize that. I thought you would
I thought it was but literally it's a 2-click upload. You have to upload it and then say yes. And I did not say yes. And so yes, it was like, so I'm a little behind this morning now. But one of those things, if everything's going smooth, and then you're like, I didn't click the second yes.
I'm sorry about that, brother.
I apologize. So we got it done. Luckily, I get here in enough time, and there's time rated out that everything should be okay. We'll see if any snafus that happened that I missed anything this morning. Then a little bit more time in the morning. Then I was scrounging a little bit. But yes, we got the audio. But that was very much, I think people relate to, hey, man, going to be a good day today. Everything's going crap.
Yep. No, I've done that too. I've wrote up emails and literally didn't send. I'm like, why did this person respond to my email?
Yeah.
I didn't send the email.
Oh, it's in my drafts folder.
I just wrote it up. Yeah, it's like, I'm with you. I have those brain farts all the time. Trust me. I have it more and more that I have a kid, honestly. So I get you. I sympathize with your situation. But I appreciate you. I appreciate you going all the way back, man.
We got
He did that for y'all, the listeners. He did it for the listeners.
No, we did it. We did it. We have a good show here on the broadcast. We always try and give you the most. And give the most. My co-host, he is a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is a new Rod Father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
I appreciate you for that, man. Man, I didn't realize it was going to be, I like I said, I've done stuff like that before, and I'm like, oh, I cannot believe that I was so absent-minded that I could be
No,
that
and
absent-minded.
to,
But it
to
happens. You get distracted, and then it's just trust me. I
no,
do it
and
all the
luckily
time.
I don't live that far away. There's no real traffic in the morning, so it was
That's
able
true.
to just drive back. But it was
That's
literally
an extra
drive
like
back.
30 minutes you didn't set aside in the
Yes,
morning. Though.
open up my computer, hit power, turns on, plug in,
You're
and
like,
then just go.
no.
And it just pops up, and on the screen is still like, "Are you sure?"
It's like, hey man, I've been waiting on you. Are you sure what you want to do? Why you?
Yes. Okay, uploading. No.
Oh yeah, I feel your pain, but I appreciate you though, because easily could have went. Nah, you know what? We don't need it. It's Friday. It's Friday. You could have mailed it in.
I
You
could
could have mailed
no,
it.
we don't mail it
Fridays
in.
are for mailing it in.
We
Most
don't-
people were like, you know what? Friday we'll figure it out.
No.
And you're right. We would have figured it out. It would have been fun.
Yeah.
But I know
No,
you
we
are.
don't mail it in on
You're
the
professional.
Rodcast.
We don't mail it in. No, we don't mail it in even on a Friday. We don't mail it in, but I appreciate you either way. So hopefully you're not mailing it in either. Even on a Friday, I want you guys to go out there, work hard, give your best so you can feel good about relaxing this weekend, watching a whole lot of football, which is what we are going to be talking about on the show today. So Patrick also hooked us up. So we're going to be actually hearing from Steve Sarkisian next segment. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian talking about their upcoming opponent and also addressing the Jonte Cook situation, the mutually parting of ways between Jonte Cook and Texas. And, we'll get into it, but, it's like the mutual breakup. There's really no mutual breakup. Somebody initiated the breakup, but we can say it's mutual when we talk to people, but everybody knows there's no real such thing as a mutual breakup or a mutual parting of ways or a mutual divorce. No, somebody initiated it. Somebody first decided that they wanted to, break that trust, or somebody decided that they wanted to. Sometimes I would say sometimes you, as guys, you sabotage relationships because guys hate breaking up with women. So you'll start wondering why your boyfriend is acting like such an a-hole. You're like, I don't know what's going on. He's trying to have you have enough self-respect. All right, so you will recognize he's treating you so badly that you will go, I can't take this anymore. I'm breaking up with you. I don't know why you're treating me so badly. He goes, you're damn right. You should have more respect than that. And thank you for having that self-respect and breaking up with me, the a-hole. All right, boom. And that's the whole, it's not you, it's me kind of thing. Like, hey, after that, you just, if she refuses to break up with you, even after you're sabotaging, you're the saboteur of the relationship, then you got to go to the, well, hey, you know what? I'm breaking up with you, but it ain't you because you're amazing. Like you are. I don't even know. You don't even know why you're with me. I'm a dirtbag. You shouldn't even be with me. It ain't you. It's me. I am the one who's not worthy. All right. If you get that, that means he was probably trying to sabotage. My point is, they're going to say mutually parting ways. I want to know who initiated the breakup. Somebody did. No. Somebody first, somebody, maybe somebody sabotaged it. Somebody, maybe it was something we saw in the field. Maybe it wasn't. But somebody soured on the other first. That's usually how it goes. We don't sour on each other at the same time. Absurd. There was an exception to the rule. I remember the Seinfeld episode where the first mutual breakup ever. They looked at each other in the restaurant and was like, I want to break up at the same time. It's like, okay, now that's a mutual breakup. You guys really at the same time. You said it, right? Jinx, buy me a Coke. That rarely happens, guys. We know this. We've been in enough relationships, business-wise, personal-wise, whatever. All right, romantically, it rarely happens. A mutual breakup is like breakup sex. It's rare. I'm sure it happens. I'm sure there have been some lucky people out there, but it's a rarity. All right, so mutual parting of ways, we'll discuss it, but we'll also discuss who may have soured on the other first. We'll get into that, but we'll also talk about the Longhorns' upcoming opponent. The latest injury or availability report has come out. Longhorns looking good. Right now, the Florida Gators, they are a mash unit coming off of that Georgia game. So we'll discuss. But also, we got to talk about the Ravens and the Bengals. The Bengals had them. Oh, the Bengals had them, and they needed that win badly. Remember, I said last week, I don't know how the Bengals are the best bad team in the NFL. Like, because below 500, you're a bad team. That's just the reality of it. That's Bill Parcells once said, you are what your record says you are. I know, looking at you, like, that's not a bad team. Yeah. That's a bad team. They're below 500. That's a bad team. You know the wins they have? All the Cincinnati, they got 4 wins, right? They're all against 2-7 teams.
Yeah.
Carolina, Las Vegas, the Giants, and Cleveland. That's a bad football team. They're the best bad football team in the league. There ain't no doubt about it. but they're still a bad football team because they can't beat a good football team. You can't beat a good football team. You're a bad football team. Hell, you know what I mean? That's pretty much, the Texans are kind of on the verge of like, you got to beat a good football team for me to consider you a good football team. Can't consider you a good football. The only reason the Texans are a good team is because the record says they are. But you got to beat a good football team, and the Cincinnati Bengals can't do it. But Joe Burrow is playing like a top 5 quarterback. Jamar Chase is playing like a top 3 wide receiver. Trey Hendrickson's playing like the top 3 edge rusher in the NFL. Their defense is a top 10 defense, or at least it was for 3 quarters in that game. Best bad for. I don't know if there's a better team in the NFL with a losing record. There's not even close.
But it goes to show you, which we've seen with other teams in the Texas area, you got to have a running game.
Got to have a running game.
When you have to throw the ball 56 times in the game, it's going to hurt. At a certain point, that's not necessarily a recipe for success. And they just had to keep throwing, which means they can just pin their ears back and come after you over and over and over again, even when you're throwing screens and whatever else.
Check down the extensions.
And I get this is a Baltimore pass offense or pass defense that's garbage. So you want to be able to throw the ball against them, but you still have to be able to run the ball a little bit so they keep the defense a little bit honest. And they just rush Joe Burrow play after play, and they hit Joe Burrow play after play after play. They put him on the ground. Guy is beat up after that game.
He balled out to 428 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did not disappoint. And Jamar Chase, they just could not cover Jamar Chase.
No.
We'll talk about it, but he had 11 catches for 264 yards in 2 of those scores, and 3 of those scores. But he also had those 2, long touchdowns. And honestly, they had the Ravens for 3 quarters. And their game plan was magnificent for 3 quarters. And then you saw the Ravens just break out in that 4th. Cincinnati's defense held the Ravens to fewer than 150 yards total in the first 3 quarters, and then fell apart in the 4th quarter. Gave up 3 long touchdown drives, and essentially allowed the Ravens to take control of the game. And once they took control of the game, it kind of went back and forth. But we expected it to be a slobber knocker and just a battle all the way to the finish. That's exactly what you got. We'll talk about the 2-point conversion chance. I like the decision to go for 2 points, even if you're not going to win. You're the Bengals. You got to take some chances. They were aggressive the entire game, so it tracked and aligned with really their mentality in the game. But man, when you're up by 14 points, how about this stat? Since we'll get into Horn headlines here and come back and discuss it. Cincinnati 33-1 straight up since 2018 when they were leading by 14 points or more at any point in the game. They'd won 27 in a row prior to that when they were leading by 14 points or more at any point in the game. And this is the one that they couldn't close on. Like I said, they had every opportunity to win that game against the Ravens. Well, some people can talk about the officiating, but the Bengals can't blame officiating. I mean, they had that game. They just had to close it out.
No, there is something, and I have to go back and look at how they did this in the Texans game, because it has thrown me off, because every other game I've watched, I've seen this happen again. But in the Texans game last weekend, there was a play where there was a face mask the Texans had, and they face masked. They did do it, and there was no flag. And then afterwards, they were like, oh, by assist or whatever else, there's a flag. It was a face mask. And you were like, okay, like I get it. That's the right call, but I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could they could be like, hey, you missed this really obvious face mask. And I thought it may be like a retro, the response.
Did it come from the booth?
I don't know if it came from the booth or back in wherever it came from. I have to go back and watch, because I know that there was no flag thrown, and then all of a sudden there was like by the way, there's a face mask, first down for whoever. I can't remember who they're playing right now, but I remember seeing that and was like, I can't be that mad because it's the right call, but you missed it. And so I didn't know. So I'm like, if we're doing that, fine, but let's do it. And I thought it was in response to the Sam Darnold. They missed that. And then maybe the NFL was like, hey, if you see a really blatant one, just call it. But then there was like 3 or 4 times that happened last night, and they never stopped it. And they never said, by the way, there was a face mask. And I went, and you're like, I've seen like 3 games now where they're just blatant face masks and they don't go back and go, if you're going to call that, and do that, then we have to do it everywhere, right? So I got to go back, and I know this happened because it happened to the Texans, and it threw me off when it happened, and it felt like something that happened when Texas, where I guess somebody maybe came out afterwards, and one of the umpires goes, "Oh, I didn't throw my flag, but by the way, I saw a face mask." Like, well, throw the flag then. I don't know what happened in it, but I'm very curious now because it felt like they said because of like on further inspection or whatever they said there was a face mask, but I haven't seen it when multiple other plays, and there was a couple times in that game where there were face masks that weren't called.
Yeah, no, they were.
And important situations.
Yeah, and they can talk about some people say there was a holding that wasn't called on a 2-point conversion, and have that last drive by Cincinnati. How many penalties were there on the Ravens? 3 or 4. They had right. They had the face mask. They had a roughing the passer on there too, I believe at one point. I mean, they had like 3 penalties, big penalties that really propelled the Bengals down the field on that drive to hopefully they were trying to win the game, but the 2-point conversion, they came up 1 point shy. Ravens win 35-34. So I mean, the officiating is bad, but the officiating is questionable all around the league.
Yeah,
so it adds up, right? It over time, over the course of a game, over the course of a season, you'll get your calls that'll obviously be in your favor, or no calls that'll be in your favor, and you'll get the ones that are against you. Yes, some may seem like they directly cost you a game, but like I said, I don't necessarily want to get into officiating because it's to me it's kind of the Ouroboros, like the snake eating its own tail. It's like what are we gonna do about it? There's nothing you can really do about it. We can talk about the teams and their strategies and the scheme and how they can improve and the players. What the hell are we gonna talk about how the refs and the officials are gonna improve? I mean, they are what they are.
Yeah,
they're flawed. And what do you want to say? I watch football all the time. I watch college football. I watch NFL. A lot of calls missed, a lot of bad calls, period. Like, that's just the reality of it. I think that is just something everybody's got to deal with. And you may argue, oh man, it's more advantageous to this team than the other. I don't know if I'd say that, but yes, there was some missed calls in the game. But if you're the Ravens, if you're the Bengals, you're up 14 points on the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
You're up 14 points.
Going into the fourth quarter.
You can blame officiating if you want to. You got to find a way to win that game. And you were desperate. Like, that was a must-win game for you to keep your playoff hopes alive. And I think mathematically, I'm sure their playoff hopes are still alive, but in that division, it's going to be tough. I mean, they're right now, it looks like the Bengals are on the cusp of, thinking about 2025 in the upcoming draft. And it's crazy to say that because how good they are, but it's going to be really hard to battle back in that division and try to make the playoffs as a wild card team. All right, we'll come back. We'll talk more about the Ravens and the Bengals. We'll talk about the Ravens. I said something earlier this year about the Ravens and Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and the way they're playing, that you could end up having, an MVP and an offensive player of the year, the front runners for those 2 awards in the same backfield. That is now the case. Like, it is now the case where Lamar Jackson, I believe, best odds to win MVP. And if I'm not mistaken, Derrick Henry has the best odds to win Offensive Player of the Year. So we'll talk about that historically. I believe my man Patrick found out the one time, or at least the one team, and the only 2 players in history who could say that they actually were in the same backfield to win MVP and Offensive Player of the Year in that same backfield. So we'll talk about that a little bit because I think history is going to repeat itself for the Baltimore Ravens, or at least in that regard. I think you're going to have an Offensive Player of the Year and MVP in the same season. It's rare. Doesn't happen a lot. It's only happened once. It's happened twice, but it's only happened once with the same team. Right, it's happened twice, but with the same team and the same 2 players. I think you might get that lightning in a bottle again with the Ravens. So we'll discuss that on the other side. But first, let's get the Horn headlines. Let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs got a 118-105 win over the Trailblazers last night. 8 Spurs scored in double digits. And the Spurs announced yesterday also that star guard Devin Vassell was cleared to return to the court for the first time this season and is expected to return during this homestand. Tonight, the Mavericks face a hot Suns team, and the Rockets head to OKC to take on the Thunder. In college basketball, the Longhorns look to get their first win against Houston Christian tonight. This will be Texas' home opener in the debut of Trey Johnson in the Moody Center. Also tonight, number 1 Kansas will be in action against number 9 North Carolina. And on Saturday, number 4 Houston plays number 11 Auburn, and number 8 Baylor, already with one loss, takes on number 16 Arkansas. In college football, Texas takes on Florida in Austin at an 11 a.m. kickoff. Then number 3 Georgia faces number 16 Ole Miss. Number 20 Colorado plays Texas Tech in Lubbock. And number 11 Alabama goes up against number 15 LSU in a game that will end the losers' playoff hopes. And in the NFL, the Bengals scored a touchdown on a late drive, but missed a 2-point conversion, then gave the Ravens a 35-34 win. On Sunday, the Cowboys play division rival the Eagles in Dallas, and the Texans take on the red-hot Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football, and that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines and another brilliant performance by Lamar Jackson. Currently, Lamar Jackson is... From that, right now he has the highest passer rating in the league after last night, and if it holds right now, his passer rating of 123. He has a 123.2 passer rating. That is the highest. That is the 4th highest passer rating through 10 games of a season since 2000. Only Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees have had higher passer ratings through 10 games at this point in the season. And those other quarterbacks, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees, either won the MVP or were runner-up for the MVP. So they either won it or they were runner-up for the MVP. And right now, Lamar Jackson, after last night's performance, I mean, he was just brilliant last night. Had a 142 passer rating. He is the favorite for MVP. And I said a couple of weeks ago, and I remember Patrick looking it up. I was like, man, I wonder how often it's happened, MVP and Offensive Player of the Year in the same backfield. At the time, I don't think he was the favorite for the MVP. But now he is the favorite for the MVP. And right now, Derrick Henry is the favorite for Offensive Player of the Year. So it may happen. And Patrick, you found out that it has happened actually twice before, but just on the same team with the same 2 players. It happened in 1999 with Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk. When Kurt Warner was one of the greatest stories ever told in the history of the NFL. Guy was sacking groceries, came from the Arena Football League, was the backup to Trent Green, and then ends up coming in and threw 41 touchdowns. And, Marshall Faulk, remember, he was traded from the Colts that year. So that was also part of the story. And he had that amazing season where he had over 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards. So he only scored 12 touchdowns. So a lot of people thought that Marshall Faulk should have won MVP. Kurt Warner should have been Offensive Player of the Year. But they gave it to Kurt Warner because it's a quarterback award, unfortunately. Yep. They just gave it to Kurt Warner. And I kind of agree. I think now looking at it, man, Marshall Faulk probably should have won it, but Kurt Warner won the award. And it was obvious that he won. He got 33 of the 50 votes, and Marshall Faulk finished second place tie actually with Peyton Manning, a young Peyton Manning with 8 MVP votes. But for Offensive Player of the Year, Marshall Faulk won it with 26 votes to 18 for Kurt Warner. And then in 2001, they did it again. This time, not as, I don't think it was as flashy. I don't think the story was as good. But Kurt Warner still led the league with over 4,800 passing yards, 36 touchdowns passing, and a 101 passer rating. And then Marshall Faulk had over 2,100 yards from scrimmage, and he led the league with 21 touchdowns. So they did it again, but this time it was closer. Kurt Warner beat out Marshall Faulk 21 MVP votes. I think it was 21.5 to 17.5. But Faulk edged out Warner for Offensive Player of the Year, 23 votes to 22 votes. So much closer. And so essentially that's it. That's the only 2 times that it's happened, and it's happened with the same 2 players on the same team, which means according to 365 scores, no quarterback has ever won MVP while playing with a player who leads the NFL in yards and touchdowns. Because the second time around, in terms of your rushing yards and touchdowns, Marshall Faulk, scrimmage yards, he led the league, and 21 touchdowns at league high in 2001. And in 99, he was obviously amazing, but he just had 12 touchdowns. And now Derrick Henry could be that guy. I mean, right now, if you look at it, he's tracking to win the rushing title, which Falk never did. And he's currently leading in total yards and touchdowns. Because Derrick Henry's leading in total yards and touchdowns, and he's tracking to win the rushing title. He's actually tracking to have his best season ever. Crazy thing about it, Lamar Jackson's tracking right now to have his best season as a passer, and Derrick Henry at 30 years old, which is supposed to be, I mean, that's supposed to be the end of days as a running back, guys. That's all the stats say, unless you are just some extraordinary beast, which Derrick Henry is, I guess, that you start to deteriorate as a running back at around 28 years old. By the time you're 30, you're supposed to be done already. This guy's having a resurgence, you know what I mean, at 30 years old, and it's because he's in the same backfield with Lamar Jackson. There's a symbiotic relationship. They're feeding off of each other right now. And so they're both on pace to have their best seasons ever. And so now you start looking at it, how many players have led the league in yards from scrimmage and touchdowns in the same season. The answer would be 11, and 4 of those 11 have actually won Offensive Player of the Year. Walter Payton did it in 1977. Priest Holmes did it in 2002. Todd Gurley did it in 2017, and Christian McCaffrey did it last season. That's 4 of 11 seasons where they won Offensive Player of the Year and also led the league in touchdowns, and also led in yards, in total yards, and yards from scrimmage. Yeah. And so if you start looking at it right now, Derrick Henry could very well make that list, and he would be the first Offensive Player of the Year, or at least Offensive Player of the Year to have an MVP in the same backfield that when he actually led the NFL in yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns. So that's never happened before, and it's looking like, I don't know right now, unless there's an injury, knock on wood, or unless Lamar Jackson starts to decline rapidly somehow, that he's the favorite to win MVP, and I think he's gonna win it. He keeps playing like this. I don't see a regression right now for the Ravens, and they may not, win as many games because their defense has some issues, as we talked about yesterday. But man, right now with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, there is no more productive backfield duo than those two.
No, but I will say there is one main person to come in and spoil the party, and that's Patrick Mahomes.
He could,
if the Chiefs remain undefeated, and he begins to play better with DeAndre Hopkins. They get Hollywood Brown to come in, and he's effective, and then they're able to put that offense and get rolling at the end of the season, and they're undefeated. Then it feels like the story is we're going to give it to the undefeated team, and we're not going to give it. So I mean, like Lamar Jackson has to make the case so over the top for himself to win it, because they're not going to want to give him a third one
and a back-to-back
and a third one before he's 30.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good point about Patrick Mahomes. But man, statistically, Patrick Mahomes wouldn't measure up. They'd be giving it to him just because if you're undefeated, I agree with you. Then all bets are off, because you'd be talking about something also unprecedented.
Yes,
which is, the Patriots did it, and the Miami Dolphins have done it, but it'd be in rarefied air. And I think they would consider, okay, Patrick Mahomes could be the MVP, even if he doesn't measure up statistically with Lamar Jackson. That'd be the only way, I think, right now, to derail it. Jared Goff could do it with Detroit, but I think Detroit would have to go on a similar run that you're talking about. They would have to go continue to be undefeated. So they'd go, okay, Jared Goff is the guy, and we should give it to him, because he's had a remarkable 6-game stretch too.
Yeah, and I think too, it's they'll look at the stats of Baltimore, but if they lose 4 or 5 more games throughout the season, and even though it's going to be basically in the fact that defense is porous at best, that that'll hurt the odds because they go, well, yeah, you did that, but you're a 7-loss team or a 6-7-loss team. We're not giving you the MVP because as valuable as you are, we get that you'd be a 15-loss team without you. But at the same point, we're not going to give the MVP to a guy on a wild card team.
Yeah, well, yeah, unless your stats are just crazy, and they could be.
Yeah, I mean, that would I have to
ridiculous.
look that one up. Last time someone to win an MVP, not a division winner, or not in at least close, like fighting for a division lead.
Yeah, no, the wins come along with it. It does, and usually that means you're a division winner because you're going to win 11, 12 games somewhere in there. That usually puts you in the division lead unless you got some just wild division that year is just really competitive. Most of the time, 11, 12 wins will put you there. If they're 11 and 12 wins, they'll be in the conversation to be a division winner and in the conversation to get the number one seed too. And right now, the number one, that top seed is going to be hard to get because right now Kansas City's got a lock on it in the AFC.
Yes.
Seems like, I'm not mathematically, but just eye test wise. And honestly, in the NFC, it's going to be hard to take it from Detroit. Detroit's rolling right now. Rolling. I don't see, and now I will say the 49ers are getting Christian McCaffrey back. 49ers are a different monster when they start getting guys healthy.
Yeah.
Ayuk's out for the season, but they get Christian McCaffrey back and they get Debo back. That's really all they need. that formula, it will work if they get some of those multiple pieces back, those hybrid pieces back. Christian McCaffrey being added to the mix, that could be a different 49er team.
Yeah.
So now you got to watch out for the 49ers.
No, and then Commanders do people figure them out by the end of the season, or do they just keep rolling?
Oof. I don't. Yeah, that's a great question too. Is there a rookie wall for Jaden Daniels of some kind? Because is that the third best team in the NFC?
They're what, 3-loss team? Something like that? 2-3-loss team?
What NFC teams are better than the Commanders? The Detroit Lions are better.
Yeah.
Than Commanders right now. Do you want to say Minnesota's better than the Commanders?
No.
I
don't want to say it.
I don't say
they're both.
The 49ers. I would take the 49ers with Christian McCaffrey.
No, because Washington's 7-2, Minnesota's 6-2. So even record-wise, we can't say.
That's what I'm saying. Like I'm just throwing out some of the better teams. And would you take Green Bay? You think Green Bay is a better team?
No, not right now.
The 49ers in Detroit.
The question is, does at the end of how the Cowboys at the end of last season, people figured out Dan Quinn, and that fell apart at the end of the season. Does that happen to the Commanders? Does Jaden Daniels hit a wall? That's really the question, because we've seen Dan Quinn's defenses fall apart at the end of the year before.
That's true.
So that's more my question is, do they fall apart at the end of the year? But I think right now they're the third best team. Second best team. Third best.
No, I agree with you. That's I think they're definitely in the top three.
Yeah.
Except 49ers and the Lions, I think the only team I'd put ahead of the Commanders right now. I didn't think I'd be saying.
And honestly, I wouldn't put the 49ers. I think the 49ers, when Christian McCaffrey comes back, can be better. But
that's
right
what I'm saying,
now, 49ers, I can't put ahead of them.
Right now, 49ers, no, but I assume, because they got Christian McCaffrey supposed to be coming back this week.
He is supposed to be coming back. But yeah, I just want to see it. I just want to see it on the field first. I agree with you.
But I've seen it with them enough, so I know just add Christian McCaffrey. It's good. It's when I'm making brownies with Betty Crocker. I already know I just got to add this and add that. I add the eggs, I add this, and it's going to taste a certain way. That's the 49ers. You add Christian McCaffrey, you add Debo. I can tell you what Kyle Shanahan's
I'm more on the sense of, let's see if Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey before we celebrate him coming back. Because sometimes guys have injuries like that, and especially as running backs get older, and you just go, oh, the step is gone.
Okay.
And he doesn't break tackles the same way. He doesn't do, So that's more of what I'm saying is I need to see him play football the way Christian McCaffrey plays football. And then he comes back.
That's a good point. My assumption was he's healthy, but you're right. It could, Father Time's undefeated.
No, and he apparently had an injury bad enough that he had to go overseas to treat it.
I think you're right. I think they had some revolutionary procedure or thing he could use that wasn't even cleared by the FDA over here.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. It's some stuff like Kobe used to do stuff like that all the time.
No, I agree. So that's the thing is he all hunky dory and ready to go, or that's the big question. That's it.
No, you're right about that. No, that's no. I agree with you. And honestly, Jaden Daniels, we were just talking about MVP candidates.
Yeah.
He should be in the conversation. I know he's not going to win it because rookies will never win the MVP. That's just not the way the NFL works anymore. Unless you have the best record and you
Yeah.
are the best player and make it obvious. That's not the case here. But he should be in that conversation too. I think Lamar Jackson is probably your leader, and then you look at Patrick Mahomes because he's starting to trend in the right direction, especially with DeAndre Hopkins there. And if they can stay undefeated, he'll stay in that conversation. And then there's a Jared Goff probably thrown there. Sure, Josh Allen has probably got some pretty good odds. But Jaden Daniels should be in that conversation too. My man CJ Stroud is probably falling off. Remember, he was supposed to be the sleeper for the MVP. That's not necessarily happening. And we'll see. He gets a chance to bounce back versus the Detroit Lions, and that'll be a game that's in prime time. So if he wants to win over some folks for his MVP campaign, that'll be a really good chance to do it. Matter of fact, we'll talk about that matchup too coming up a little bit later on. All right, but first, when we come back, let's get into some Texas football conversation. We'll go behind the Burn curtain. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian talking about their upcoming opponent and talking about the mutually parting of ways with his wide receiver, Jonte Cook. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to some Texas football conversation. Yesterday, the news broke that Texas and Jonte Cook, the receiver, were parting ways, and it was a bit, I don't know, there was some dispute, I guess, over the language, whether it was a mutual parting of ways or whether he was dismissed from the program. Sark did confirm that it was a mutual parting of ways, and as I pointed out, there is no real such thing as a mutual parting of ways. We say that so that we can sound civilized, but the truth is, we know somebody sours on the other first, right? That's just the way it is. Whether it's a business relationship, whether and this one is a business relationship, or whether it's a social relationship, or whether it's a romantic one, somebody sours on the other first. And they may not want to admit it, and it may be something that they're only willing to admit behind closed doors. But we all know it, all right. And my question is, who soured on who first? Did the coaches and the coaches and the team kind of sour on Jonte Cook first, or did Jonte Cook get tired of his situation? Remember, Sark always says, "Hey man, don't count your snaps, make your snaps count." He readily admits. And not everybody's not getting a lot of reps around here, man. You can't. We too deep. You ain't getting a lot of reps. Even the receiver that plays the most is Matthew Golden. I believe he's the guy that plays the most. And I think behind him, Isaiah Bond gets the most reps. And I think ultimately Jonte Cook looked at his situation. Think about where he was. He had the most experience with this system of any receiver in that room. Everybody else was a new guy coming in, having to learn the system, or they were a young guy coming up. He had because it was like him and DeAndre Moore, right, with the most experience in the system, and he was considered somebody who was ahead of DeAndre Moore. Don't we all agree?
Yeah, I mean,
even last year, Sark was like, "I got to get Jonte Cook on the field." He never said, "I got to get DeAndre Moore on the field." No, there was none of that.
No, I mean, we saw Corey Mose posted yesterday the video from the combine of everybody at the combine talking about how good Jonte Cook was going to be.
Yeah.
And all the players be like, man, this guy's coming up. He's going to be really good. And
which means he was playing a lot. I mean, he was getting reps with the first team. Yeah. It means he was – so he had the lead in the competition. When did he lose the lead? And not only lose the lead in the competition, guys, he's now outside. I said the point last week where he was outside the circle of trust. I said, guys, Jonte Cook's outside the circle of trust. I was like, he ain't even playing. And he wasn't. He was getting single-digit snaps in games.
Yeah.
In the last couple of games. So how did he lose that lead? Guys, you're talking about he lost that lead within, 6 months?
Yeah.
What was it? At the combine, they're talking about how great he was going to be, and we were talking about how Jonte Cook was going to be one of the leaders in that room, and a guy with more experience than almost everybody in that room, with more knowledge of the system than almost everybody. The chemistry with Quinn, he probably had as much, or if not more, than anybody else in that room. And yet, all of a sudden, within a few months, everybody surpassed him, including a freshman, including Ryan Wingo. Freshman surpassed him on the depth chart. I just think he looked at the situation and thought to himself, I got no way to play. If I have been surpassed that quickly by the three guys they brought in, which he has, Golden, Bond, Bowden, all of them ahead of him. And then Ryan Wingo, freshman, ahead of him. Oh, DeAndre Moore, the guy you may have been on the same level with, he is now on a different level and surpassed you. And he got guys coming in. And Sark's going to hit the transfer portal again. We talked about it yesterday. Golden can come back. I think Bond's going to be gone, but Golden can come back. That's another guy. DeAndre Moore can come back. I mean, he is coming back.
Yeah, DeAndre Moore has to. I mean, unless he transfers. Yeah, he cannot.
My point is, they got other guys coming. There are other guys that are going to be coming back next year. Exactly. That you got to compete with, and you are not right now on their status level. So I just think he looked at the situation. He had no path to play. He knew it. Now, how in 6 months or whatever you went from one of the top three in that room to being outside the circle of trust, that I don't know how that happened so quickly. It wasn't just that one drop in the Mississippi State game. That was a bad drop. But that couldn't have been it.
No, because it's in practice. Because we saw Silas Bolden. I mean, he wasn't doing anything, and then they force-fed him the ball. Like, they made sure to get him because of what he was doing in practice, because of what he was doing, that we didn't see. And so it has to be somewhere there. And I mean, maybe it is just, this is a best for everybody. You need a change of scenery because whatever it is, it got in your head and now you're not doing the things you were doing a year ago. And if you're not making the catches you were making a year ago, it's mental. It's not you didn't get worse. You mentally are not fully there. So go get your head clear, end up somewhere else, and go prove what you can be. But yeah, it feels like it was. There's no path to play. And for Sark, if you're not going to be happy, I don't need you to not be happy here. Like I get it, but toxic. Yeah, I don't need you to and I get it. I don't think there's any point where he doesn't get it. And yeah, and I mean we could play the audio. There's about 8 seconds, maybe 10 seconds in the whole media availability. It's like 30-minute media availability. Maybe 8 seconds he talks about it. In the opening, he wishes him and his family the best of luck. And then when he was asked by Kirk Bowles if it was mutual or not, he said it was a mutual decision. And that was the end of that conversation. So it was not asked about a ton because he was clearly not really going to talk about it. So, but yeah, he spent maybe 8 seconds in the whole thing talking about it. But it makes sense that's those things are going to happen as you continue to recruit really well and you continue to push in today's college football. That's kind of the name of the game at this point. That if you have a really good player and they're not getting what they expected to get.
No, I agree. And my thing is I don't even know how much they trusted Jonte from the jump. They brought in 3 transfer portal wide receivers, and that was that. Nothing against. But I'm just saying, I don't know if they trusted. Oh no, he's definitely going to be a guy. We can guarantee he's going to be the dude. I don't think they knew. That's why they brought in 3 of them. And turns out they were right because all 3 they brought in are ahead of him on the depth chart. So I think the coaches soured on him first. Mutually parting of ways, but I think they soured on him first because they started to see the potential of the other guys in that room. And maybe it's just that he doesn't bring anything special to the table. Could be that. Right? It could just be, what's his special, unique X-Man ability? Bond is your speed guy. Wingo's got the size speed combination that nobody else in that room has because you got smaller guys. Golden seems to have earned the trust of everybody, plays more than all the receivers. And he seems to be the red zone target for Quinn. Quinn seems to like him in that regard. Silas Bowden is the shiftier guy that seems to be change of direction, short area quickness. He seems to be that guy, and Sark loves those kind of guys. And DeAndre Moore, well, he's the character guy. DeAndre Moore is he's the ultimate presence in that room. He's the leader in that room. He's the guy that will go down and be a gunner, but also, doesn't complain when he doesn't get the targets, learn that, how to be a great teammate from Jordan Whittington. So he's more the glue guy. I don't know what Jonte is. I don't know what does he bring to that room that's unique. And maybe that's part of it too, that Sark didn't weaponize him like he did a Silas Bowden or scheme him up like he did Silas Bowden because he didn't really see, any way to do that. So I'm not sure what it is, but I figure the coaches started to move on from him a little bit. And you notice.
And then keep in mind, Texas already has committed right now for next season a 5-star and 2 4-star wide receivers coming in.
He knows.
So, you have 3 guys that all are going to be fighting to get playing time the next couple of years. Yeah.
No, you're right. He knows. I think this is a good thing. This is what the transfer portal is for.
Yeah.
But just trying to figure out exactly what we were all wondering, like what's going on with Jonte Cook. We talked about it for the last 2-3 weeks. We're like, he seems to have kind of disappeared. Because early on, they were working him in the rotation when they were trying to figure out who was going to step up and separate in this group. And obviously, it wasn't Jonte. And I think that Jonte probably wanted to go somewhere else where he can get a fresh start and where he thought he had a better path to play. That's what this is all about, guys. Path to play, because everybody on that roster got the same dream. They all want to play in the league. You can't play in the league if you don't play. Can't play in the league if you don't play. So everybody has got to find a way to play on the field. And I just think for him, it was a net. His path was growing narrow. More and more narrow by the day. All right, we'll hit that Sark sound next hour. We'll start off our and hit some of that Sark sound and start to preview the Texas-Florida matchup a little bit and hear from Sark about what they did during the bye week, self-scouting, some of the issues that they had to address. We'll talk about that and hear from Steve Sarkisian next hour. But coming up next segment, we're going to get into the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day and the musically themed day of the week right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn.
Back on the Rodcast here on a Friday, and that means it's a 5-1-2 Friday where we play local music. You can go check out live around town this weekend. And this is Hector Ward in the big time. They're doing a big party Saturday at 3:10 right there below ACL Live. You can go check out Hector Ward on Saturday evening. I know we'll be watching football, but it's an early game. This is actually, you can get out and actually go see some music or go out and have a good night with an 11 a.m. game. Have a good old weekend. Go out and check out some stuff. Right. Let's get to the big fat poll today. Text line's open 512-447-3776, and we'll get this posted up on X at the Horn ATX.
Patrick's big fat poll of the day on the Horn.
Big fat poll today. How many points will Texas allow Florida? How many points will Texas allow to Florida? I'll give you some choices here. 0-9, 10-15, 16-21, and 22+.
I'm gonna say under. You said 16. What you say? 16?
16-21, 10-15, and 16-21.
16-21. I just don't know how they. I'm gonna go below that. I'll say they score like 13 or 10. They have third string quarterbacks probably going to be out there. They're not going to put DJ Lagway out there. I just can't see that happening. There's no way.
It's still
questionable. I just don't see it.
It seems like it has to be gamesmanship, right?
Yeah, there's just no way. I mean, even with minor hamstring injuries, guys are limping around there. I mean, that means he can't do any rollouts or bootlegs or no design runs really for him. He's not a great pocket passer anyway. He does have a big arm, but that's also going to be limited because he's not going to be able to drive the football because of the hamstring injury. I don't know. If I'm Texas, my game plan is mostly basically is mostly going to be tailored to Aiden Warner, who's the third string walk-on transfer from Yale. It would not be DJ Lagway.
I will enjoy saying who's going to try and get the first look of all the reporters for Texas to get the first look at Lagway.
Oh yeah,
when he comes out and see him if he comes out for warm-ups, if he's ready to, where everyone's just going to be kind of trying to look around for him, and you'll see all the guys with press passes down there on the field before the game during warm-ups, just trying to find him. Is he out? Is he coming out of the tunnel yet? Is he here? I gotta be the first one to tweet it. I gotta be the first one.
I'm with you. I want to see it too, though.
I'm curious.
I just want to see if he's limping around out there, or if he looks good.
Like does he jog out of the tunnel, or does he come out on crutches? Because he could technically come out on crutches.
He could come out. I really have no idea how he's gonna look, because last time I saw him, he was being carted off the field.
Yeah,
and so like I said, I haven't seen a latest report if he's practicing. If he practiced again, I remember he practiced earlier this week. I'm assuming he is, but the latest injury report had him at questionable. That would be a miracle if he goes out there and starts that game versus Texas. I don't see it happening, because now we'll get into this too. Billy Napier has been given the security of the administration, saying that he will not be fired at the end of this season and is not coaching for his job. So essentially saying that they're at least going to bring him back. I'm assuming that they're going to at least bring him back.
I thought that statement was, we're not firing him this season.
Yeah, as I say, they're not going to fire him this season, which means he'll be safe for next season.
I don't know. I didn't necessarily read it that way. Maybe, but I thought maybe at the end of the season they would reconsider, but not during the season. There will not be a firing during the season.
I don't know. They didn't necessarily specify either way. They just said.
Then again, it's college football. These things could change still. If he loses the next 3 games by 50 points, then he's still fired.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to lose the next 3 games regardless.
No, but I said with 50 points. Like, if he starts to get embarrassed.
Yeah, he has not been embarrassed, actually. They've been competitive, way more competitive than people thought they'd be. But I don't know, Billy Napier, we'll get into read the statement, but he was given the support of the administration, that he is not on the hot seat right now. And I think, and basically what they're saying is that they're going to spend the money they would spend on his buyout. They're going to devote that to NIL, essentially reallocate that to NIL resources for him. So at least I think he's safe for this season. If he loses to Florida State, though, I think all bets are off, because Florida State's so bad.
Yeah.
If he loses to them, and that's an in-state rival, that I think something. They may fire him on the tarmac kind of thing. But yeah, as long as he's not embarrassed, as Patrick said, and he doesn't lose to Florida State, I think he'll be good.
I like that. We'll spend on NIL money. Hey Napier, just want to let you know we have the money. It's
they
waiting.
got the money.
No.
Yeah.
Now it's not that we can get the money. We have. It is ready to go. I have had people call me for the last month telling me they will help pay to get you out of here.
Yeah. Here's the statement from the administration. Gator Nation, I want to let you know that Billy Napier will continue as head football coach of the Florida Gators. As we've seen these past several weeks, the young men on this team represent what it means to be a Gator. Their resolve, effort, and execution are evident in their performance and growth each week, building a foundation that promises greater success next season and beyond. UF's commitment to excellence and a championship caliber program is unwavering in these times of change across college athletics. We are dedicated to a disciplined, stable approach that is focused on long-term, sustained success for Gator athletes, recruits, and fans. I am confident that Billy will meet the challenges and opportunities ahead. We will work alongside him to support any changes needed to elevate Gator football. As college athletics evolves, UF is committed to embracing innovation and strategy and ensuring the Gators thrive in today's competitive landscape. So on and so forth. So they really said they didn't say anything, but other than he's not going to be fired. Basically for the foreseeable future, he'll be our coach.
Yeah.
How far is the foreseeable future? In the future, I don't know.
Yeah, he won't be fired until we want to fire him.
Pretty much. They still, they didn't talk a lot about next. They did say they want stability for next season, but they don't necessarily say he's going to be the guy. They just basically said he's not going to get fired right now. This is all about recruiting, so they can hold on to recruits.
This is recruiting, and this is stop calling my office. Stop calling me. I get it. You want to fire? Stop calling me.
Yeah, I mean, it mainly says I call on all of Gator Nation to continue standing behind Billy and his dedicated team while we work together to build a championship program. All right. So my point is with Billy Donovan, Billy Napier, with him now having support of the administration and the athletic director, I don't know if you'll risk, if he indeed sees himself as the coach going forward, where you would risk the franchise, but the program's most valuable asset right now, which is DJ Lagway.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, now you have stability going forward. You're not coaching for your job. You're just coaching for your job. Then I get like, all right, you probably want to try to get that young man out there, or even, whether it's just more than gamesmanship or whatever. But now that you have some security, I'm even more confident it's going to be the Aiden Warner show. And hell, he might come out there in street clothes. He might not even come out there in a jersey at all.
No, that's what I'm saying. He could, he was on, I think they showed him on crutches at the end of the game last weekend. He came back out with like a full leg cast and on crutches. He could come out on crutches. He could come out limping. He could come out. Yeah. I think if I'm Billy Napier, I put him questionable all week and then I roll him out in a wheelchair. It's really
really throw him off.
He almost was ready to go, but he couldn't stand up, so we didn't want to put him out there.
Yeah. Guys tough as nails. Guys practice all week, just couldn't get it done. And maybe that's how he practiced. We had him, doing drills in the wheelchair. He was really dedicated. All right, so we'll get into some more Texas, Florida, because I want to hear from Steve Sarkisian on the other side about what they focused on in the bye week and the Florida Gators this upcoming weekend. We'll get into that. Also, we'll get into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We got to talk Texans and Lions. I found some more troubling, but also I think some more. It's a troubling trend for the Texans, but I think it's an easy way for the Texans to reverse this trend. And I'll talk about that coming up when we get into the Texans and the Lions a little bit. And also, we got all your usual favorites on the show. We got Rod's Rant coming up on the other side as well. I'll tell you what NFL matchup this weekend has me most excited. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a freak flag, feel good, fake it till you make it. Ric Flair, woo, 512 Football Friday edition of the Rodcast. And that 512 means that my co-host, the billionaire Patrick Davis, playing jams from local bands and artists, very talented human beings that you have a chance to catch live right here in the ATX. Who are we jamming right now, Patrick?
This is Ray Prim, very talented Ray Prim. He plays Saturday at the Continental Club. Always a pleasure to go see Ray.
All right, there you go. Appreciate Patrick hooking us up there for our 512 Fridays. Also, he hooks us up for the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day. Patrick, what is the topic today for the Big Fat Poll of the day?
Your topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day: how many points will Texas allow to Florida? We gave you 4 options there on the poll on X: 0 to 9, 10 to 15, 16 to 21, and 22 plus.
I mean, that defense is stingy, man. That defense is allowing what's the second best scoring defense in the country, allowing, I think, 11.5 points per game right now. I think only Army is better. The Army's actually 11.2. So they're essentially, based off, in my opinion, you talking about the best defense in the country. If you look at all the metrics, number 1 total defense, number 1 pass defense. They are 16th in rush defense, so they're not top 3 in that category, but still one of the better rush defenses in the country. They're the best defense in yards per play allowed. I believe they're the only defense in the country allowing fewer than 4 yards per play right now. Believe if you go look at it, they're the only one allowing fewer than 4 yards per play. And they're the best defense at defending explosive plays. Like, they allow the fewest rushes of 20 plus yards or more. They've allowed the fewest passes of 20 plus yards or more. They've allowed the fewest plays. They've only allowed 13 plays of 20 plus yards the entire season. Only one 20 plus yard run. You probably remember it was that touchdown run they gave up. Who was that to? Was that UTSA? Who was that long touchdown?
I feel like
run
it was
to?
UTSA. That it was like near the end of that
so
game.
Long ago. Yeah, but it's only one. I mean, that was everybody remembers it because it was only that one. They've allowed 12 20 plus yard plays. That also is the fewest, and that 3.64 yards per play allowed. The best and the second best is 4.43. That's Indiana in yards per play allowed. It's going to go down. Right now it is trending toward being one of the top 5 best defenses in the history of Texas football, like easily. If you're looking at just scoring defense, you got that 1983 defense. I think they allowed like 9.5 points per game. So that defense will probably end up being better. The 79 defense for Texas, I think, allowed a little less than 9 points per game. Different era, of course, but still, hey, man, scoring defense is scoring defense. If you go look at the that 60, like the 69 defense, I think was allowing like around a little less than 11 points per game. That was a national title defense. I'm talking about all time here. So I know some people say, oh, only look at the modern era teams. You could, but I'm just giving you perspective in terms of, or the context at how good this defense is. And honestly, those are only defenses. I mean, hell, 61, I think they were allowing like 7 points per game. But either way, my point being, no matter if you're looking at it modern era or you're looking at the entire history of Texas football, guys, we're talking about a top 5 defense all time. If you want to talk about modern era defenses, it's probably going to be a top 3 defense all time in the modern era of Texas football.
Yeah.
I guess modern era is, to me, it's like when I was born. I don't know, like the last 45 years or whatever of Texas football.
By the way, it is a 53-yard Robert Henry run in the second quarter against UTSA.
Yep.
Yards.
I remember.
That was a play. So.
And that was a bad run fit by Texas. I think they shot the wrong gap or something like that. And then I want to say one of our safeties took a bad angle to the football. He was faster than they thought.
Yeah, basically they ran a 2-play drive for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. You're like, yep, what happened? And then they've been good. They were good before. Of this defense. They're really good after.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything like that's how you know that was kind of a fluke play. We haven't seen anything close to that on the ground for Texas. Like no team has come close to doing that. So that young man should be proud of that run because, like I said, this defense is legit. It is. So we'll have the conversation once the season is done, and I'll do the research. But right now, it is definitely trending toward being one of the top 3 to 5 best defense in the history of Texas football. No question about it. Like easily in that conversation. And I know they haven't been tested, but still that defense is really, really good. And I don't know if Florida, getting back to your question, I don't know if they can march the length of the field and score. Texas allowed 10 scoring drives the last 2 games. Only 2 of them have been longer than 38 yards. If the offense quits shooting itself in the foot and stops with the self-inflicted wounds and they play better complementary football, it's really hard because you don't have the advantage of explosive plays to help you get chunk yards to move down the field against Texas. You got to do it, the hard way, double-digit play drives. And honestly, I don't know if Florida can do that. And now if Texas offense, has turnovers and, is their own worst enemy, and then you have bad punts and, in terms of special teams, losing hidden yardage there, the defense can end up defending a short field, and then they end up scoring on a field goal, or they go in for the touchdown. But it hasn't really been to me, I don't think it's been an issue for the defense, even though we've given up some points, that they give up long scoring drives. So as long as the Texas offense is a little bit more polished and they execute better and they don't, shoot themselves in the foot and they don't have the turnovers, I think the defense is going to be just as stingy as they have been. And I say 10 to 13 points is what I'll give Florida.
Yeah. No, I mean, it doesn't feel like they're going to score a ton unless you give them those short fields.
Yep. And they've been really good with bad. Well, they've been really good against bad quarterbacks. Of course they are, but quarterbacks who are, considered basically quarterbacks who are glorified game managers who struggle to throw the football downfield, which is what I would consider a third string walk-on transfer quarterback from Yale to be. Man, they feast on those types of quarterbacks. The Texas defense does, because they faced a couple of those this season. They feast on them, and I think they'll do the same thing with Aiden Warner. Okay, we'll get to some Sark sound here in just a second, but first, let's hit the horn headlines. Then we'll come back and play some of that Sark audio and Raj rant. We'll talk NFL. We'll start to break down the Texans and matchup against the Detroit Lions a little bit. We'll also dive into last night's matchup with the Ravens and the Bengals, but we'll first talk some college football and talk some Longhorn football. But let's get educated. Let's get informed. Let's get updated with all the top stories of the day first with Patrick Davis and the Horn Headlines.
All right, your Horn Headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs got a 118-105 win over the Trailblazers last night. 8 Spurs scored in double digits. And the Spurs also announced that star guard Devin Vassell was cleared to return to the court for the first time this season, and he's expected to return during this homestand. Tonight, the Mavericks face a hot Suns team, and the Rockets head to OKC to take on the Thunder. In college basketball, the Longhorns look to get their first win against Houston Christian tonight. This will be the Texas home opener and the debut of Trey Johnson in the Moody Center. Also tonight, number 1 Kansas will be in action against number 9 North Carolina. And then on Saturday, number 4 Houston plays number 11 Auburn, and number 8 Baylor, already with 1 loss, takes on number 16 Arkansas. In college football, Texas takes on Florida in Austin at an 11 a.m. kickoff. Then number 3 Georgia faces number 16 Ole Miss. Number 20 Colorado plays Texas Tech in Lubbock. And number 11 Alabama goes up against number 15 LSU in a game that will end the losers' playoff hopes. And in the NFL, the Bengals scored a touchdown late but missed a 2-point conversion to give the Ravens a 35-34 win. On Sunday, the Cowboys play division rival the Eagles in Dallas, and Texas takes on the red-hot Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football. And that's your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. Appreciate those. We'll get to some of those a little bit later on because I want to talk some NFL. We'll do that when we go into Raj rant. But first, let's hear from Steve Sarkisian. He spoke with the media yesterday, spoke with them about a lot of different topics. We'll discuss the Jonte Cook news, of course, the mutually parting of ways with Jonte Cook. But first, I want to get into this Sark audio of him talking about the bye week and what Texas accomplished during the bye week. He talked about the self-scouting. This is actually, I think, a big part of the evolution of this team and how they can improve and how we can start to see the offense get its mojo back. I'm going to start talking about they lost their mojo. Is self-scouting, trying to figure out what teams, what teams have identified, what trends they've identified, what patterns they've identified, tendencies they've identified within your offense that now may be giving them an advantage in game planning. Because it's clear the last 3 weeks or so, SEC play, going up against defensive-minded head coaches, they've tapped into something, right? Going up against the Texas offense because it's not as explosive, and they're forcing the Texas offense into making a lot of mistakes. Or you could just maybe the self-inflicted wounds, whether you're talking about the penalties or whether you're talking about pass protection issues, whether you're talking about just Quinn and the way he handles pressure. Here's Sark when he was asked about the self-scouting that took place during the Texas bye week.
The thing about us that in self-scouting, when we don't have negative plays, and negative plays, I mean, yes, a guy tackled for a loss or a sack, but also when penalties occur offensively, we are a really efficient offensive football team. And so the one thing that we've really been stressing this week is to move the ball forward. And I know that sounds really simple, but when we don't have those negative plays, we are a very efficient team. We operate almost in first down, second down mode. And that's when we're at our best. That's when our rhythm is at our best. And so that's been the challenge this week, as aggressive as we want to call it, as much, formations, motion shifts we want to do. We want to make sure that our players understand, let's keep moving forward and let's minimize the late grabs that are potential holds. Let's minimize the sacks that maybe we're taking, waiting on a throw down the field instead of maybe finding a check down. Let's minimize the runners, maybe trying to bounce something to look for a run, but let's move forward, because when we do that, we're really efficient. And so I think that's an area that we've kind of looked at and said, okay, we can be better here. I think, in the end, I still think we've been very efficient in the red area, which is something I've been proud of the guys, the work they've put in. We did not have a very good third down day 2 games ago against Georgia. I thought we rebounded with Vanderbilt last week. So there's some things on the offensive side of the ball I feel good about. I think on special teams, one thing that we looked at that we feel very comfortable with is we're playing more young players, and they're producing, and they haven't been perfect, but they're producing. And so we're really trying to be aggressive with our intent of playing more young players on special teams to get them some experience. That's been good. And I would really say the same for the defensive side of the ball. We saw Kobe Black play more in the secondary. We've seen Jelani McDonald playing more in the secondary. Jordan Johnson-Rebel's really coming along. Alex January on the defensive front is really coming along. I've touched on Sadir Mitchell. So I think on the defensive side of the ball, continuing to build our depth. We've been playing defense at a really high level. I don't think you guys ask me enough about it. I don't think I talk enough about our defense for how good they're playing defensive football right now. But we also know, hey, we've been dealt a couple injuries. We've been dealt a guy getting suspended for half of a game, and we're going to have to rely on other people, and we got to keep developing those guys because hopefully we're playing a lot more games the rest of this way.
Yeah, I'm glad he said it too. We don't talk about how good that defense is enough. I've been trying to do it more, just to throw it out there, just that they're the best defense in the country. Potentially. Statistically, you can say they're the best defense in the country. I think we're so close to it as Longhorn fans that we take it for granted and we don't appreciate it. We're just too close to it and the turnaround has been so dramatic.
Yeah.
From last year to this year too. It's like, and I'll admit they have not had a prolific juggernaut of an offense they've had to play either. That is also true. But that does not take away and should not take away from what they've accomplished and what they've achieved. They've been magnificent. It is, It's phenomenal.
No, I think it's, there's a certain amount of it that's like, you don't say that a person doesn't miss a free throw before they shoot free throws.
Yeah.
You just are like, don't touch it. It looks good. Don't say anything. Don't breathe around that defense. Don't do anything. You're playing really well.
Like a no-hitter? Yeah. You're like a no-hitter now?
Exactly.
Like, nope, don't mention it.
So you just
look
away.
No,
I don't want to say anything yet because we haven't played against that top offense. You're playing really, really good, but
I do feel like that too. I mean, like
It
nobody
feels
wants
like
to
that.
talk about how good they are. Right? Nobody wants to brag about it. It's
No,
like,
no one wants to be the one to, because we feel like if you say it, next game, it's like, oh, if I
yeah,
say it next game, then it's on
they
me.
lit up.
Shouldn't have said something.
I called them elite the other day. People were like, "Slow down, bro." I'm like, "Slow down." They're like number one in all these categories. How can we not call them elite? Slow down, man. Slow down. But you're right. I think you're right. It feels like we don't want to jinx it. We're going to jinx it. I was like, guys, I think we're past the jinx point. I think they're just good now. We're not at 3 games in, guys. We're 8 games in. They're good. They're the real deal. Let's talk about something that hopefully that is also the real deal. Now, this is interesting. We thought the offensive line was elite too. Early on in the season, we were pretty sure, like, oh, this elite group. Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. Well, as our man Seth Golden calls them, the No More award-winning offensive line. Right? That's what they're looking like right now. 11 sacks allowed in the last 2 weeks. So Sark was asked about pass protection. To me, that had to be the number one objective in the bye week. You got to get your pass protection fixed. Here is Sark when he was asked about what they did in the bye week to shore up the pass pro.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily that we tweaked it, schematically in a sense. I think the thing that we really needed to drill down on is making sure our communication and that we're all on the same page. We've the last couple of weeks have had too many times, and one time's too many, but if it's 2 or 3 now where we have free rushers at the quarterback when the quarterback thinks he's protected, predicated on the amount of rushers that are coming. And that can then in turn spook a quarterback because it's like, I thought I was protected. Now I'm getting hit. And so why is that occurring? And so getting everybody dialed in on the same page from Jake Majors out on the offensive line to incorporating the running backs to incorporating the tight ends, that we are operating in unison as one, I think has probably been some of the biggest keys that we've had to work on this week, as opposed to just, coming up with, I don't want to say a new protection, but adjusting that protection. And so I anticipate us being better. Florida's going to challenge us with that. They're really well coached, and they've got some elaborate stuff that they do, exotic stuff that they do. But I think that's the key to the drill. And then when they have one more than we have to block, or that the pressure is coming from a side where the quarterback doesn't have his protection right, that he can either change that protection or he's got to get the ball out in kind of a hot scenario.
All right, so let's go talk about pass protection. If, like I said, we talked about this yesterday in terms of how many sacks they're going to allow, and what's considered an acceptable number. To me, it is about, they shouldn't allow more than 2 sacks. If they allow 3 to 4 sacks, we could be talking about, a systemic issue going on with the offensive line, but also the concepts, or at least how those sacks are produced. Right? It's just guys getting beat one-on-one. That's fine. Guys get beat. It happens, right? That's just football. That guy's on scholarship too. But I mean, if it's A gap blitzes, delayed blitzes, delayed rushers from the second and third level, and the cornerback or slot boundary cornerback or slot cornerback blitz, yeah, then I would be somewhat concerned. Not panicked yet, but I would be concerned, because those are the concepts that Vanderbilt they were able to deploy and execute successfully to expose the offensive line and pass protection. And they got a lot of that from Georgia. And Georgia got some of it from Venables. And you can see a blueprint building where teams go, okay, well, I know how to attack Texas. Go A, B, C, D, and E. Boom. Do that and you'll be good. And that's what you don't want to have, a clear and concise way to attack Texas by the time you get to Arkansas and you get to A&M. They ain't even got to do the work. They're like, oh, yeah, we know exactly how you should attack Texas. You need to. So however they get to Quinn, and I'm not saying they're not going to get to Quinn. It'd be great if he was just left pristine. Was the old Kelvin Banks quote? We like our quarterbacks untouched by the hands of man. All right. I need that attitude. Where's that attitude at? All right. Untouched. Now, Kelvin Banks, he's doing his thing. For everybody else, though, they need to have that Kelvin Banks attitude, untouched by the hands of man. So it's about how they get those sacks to in this game that is going to be concerning to me. Those 3 concepts. I don't want to see Texas. I don't want to see lapses when Texas has to block those kind of concepts. If they give up sacks, that's, it's going to happen. I just want to see that Texas fix the problems, the problem areas, and the problematic concepts that have plagued them the last 2 weeks. That would show me, they identified them and they went to work.
Yeah.
But if a cornerback blitz comes off of there and they get a sack or something off a cornerback blitz, I'm going to be very disappointed.
Yeah. and I'm sure there's ways they do it with their Desmond Watson, their big boy, that monster in there. I'm sure that you can run ways where you try and run with him, and then you basically try and pull two with him to allow somebody else to slide through and come out. You got to stay communicating on top of there. That Quinn can probably get away from Desmond Watson a little bit, got to block him, but let Quinn get away from him and don't allow a free rusher because you're blocking 2-on-1, because this guy is 449 pounds listed on the Florida website.
You might need 1.5 to block him at least.
449 pounds.
Which means he can't move that well.
I mean, he can move a little bit for a 449 pounder, but
he doesn't move that well.
No, that's what I'm saying is, so when he comes at you, he's going to push you back a little bit, but Quinn can probably get away from him. But if you use two blockers to stop a 449 pounder, and then a middle linebacker runs full speed at Quinn, he is not getting away from the linebacker.
Yeah, and they got like their sack leader has like 3.5 sacks, so they don't have a natural elite pass rusher there. But I agree, they do have some large athletes. And Texas hasn't really struggled with the twists and the stunts. This year they've been really good. They've been better at the twists and the stunts. They haven't struggled with simulated pressures like they have in previous years too. Really the only concepts that I've identified that are kind of giving them trouble are those three that I mentioned. How 7 of your 17 sacks that you've allowed have involved a pressure package with a cornerback or a slot cornerback blitz. It's obviously something that teams have identified. This is what we want to execute versus Texas. So we'll see how if any sacks come and how they come versus Florida. That will be a main topic of conversation. Let's hear from Sark talking about the offense and how they keep the defense off rhythm. And one of the ways you do that is by running the football, which Texas hasn't necessarily been able to run the football consistently. And that is something also that I think Texas was working on in the bye week. Part of that loss of mojo is the lack of balance with the running game. And I am ready to just say this is not an insult to the running game, and I don't want to disrespect the running game. I think the running game is just average. And I think we're so accustomed to a Bijan Rojo running game and a Jonathan Brooks, Cedric Baxter running game that now without those elements, Longhorn fans are waiting for the running game to pop.
Yeah. And
I don't think it's going to pop. I think this may be what the running game is. Can it improve? Yeah. But this is a big game. I mean, Florida's 88th in the rush defense. If that running game doesn't pop versus Florida, I don't know if it pops. And I think that's why you are starting to see Sark throw it to the outside on those attached quick screens and those quick throws on the outside to Jaden Blue behind the line of scrimmage, because that is the running game. We talked about this with Cincinnati. Cincinnati's like 6th worst rushing attack in the NFL because they consider the quick throws and the attached screens to be their running game.
Yeah.
But as you pointed out, it's hard to control a game like that, though. It's, in the fourth quarter, you actually don't wear down your opponent the way you do in the run game if you can run the rock. That's how you wear down your opponent in the fourth quarter, because they got to deal with, the physicality all 3 quarters, and you don't have to deal with that with Cincinnati. So you're fresher in the fourth quarter, which is why they can't win a game.
No, in the fourth quarter. And you have
they can't close out a game.
No, and you have issues of stopping the clock because you miss a pass on one of those, or balls get tipped because you're throwing out. They just jump in front of a screen, and you get a ball, you get a tip ball, and that can go the other way. You just see there's a lot of things that can happen in that, where if you can just run a ball and pick up 5 yards, now the other play maybe have a better chance to be explosive. But it's also has a decent enough chance to get blown up behind the line of scrimmage.
Or a tip pass.
There's a lot of bad things that can happen. It's a very valuable play, but if it's the only thing you have in the run game, it becomes very predictable. And also, it's how you get penalties when that play is not open, and now either you have an eligible man downfield because he thinks it's a run play. Your lineman thinks
Quinn has to eat it.
Or Quinn has to eat it, or he throws it and you throw it, or it's a hold because now Quinn's trying to hold, and no one was supposed to be holding anyway. And now all of a sudden you realize your quarterback still has the ball in their hand You're like, the ball was supposed to be out a while ago.
Oh, ish. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, that ain't my fault, is it? Yeah, no, but you're right. And then that goes back to what Sark just said. Then the negative play happens. Then we're way behind the chains.
Yeah, exactly. So when you
yeah.
can just hand the ball off and the guy goes and gets you 4 or 5, that's huge because now you don't have to put all those other variables in it.
Yep, totally agree. And so I think that is also hurting Texas in terms of being able to, like you said, be less predictable or be unpredictable, and also keep the defense off rhythm. So here's Sark talking about keeping the defense off rhythm with the offensive play calling.
Yeah, I think it all ties together. I hate to just become so specific it's just the pass game or the run game. I think all of the stuff that we do needs to tie together. And then I think you have to then have, call things that are, one, complementary to other plays, but two, sometimes are outside of the box, to force a defensive coordinator or coaching staff to kind of scratch their head. And I think sometimes you naturally every week you have to present new looks, things that aren't on tape that they have to adjust to, and maybe take away some of the focus. We only get, about 5 days with our players to get ready for each week. And so there's only so much you can do that is new, but hopefully you have a solid foundation of work that you put in training camp, that we can use multiple formations, motion shifts, personnel groupings to kind of disguise or hide some of those things. But then at the end, as a play caller, you want to call things that put your players in the best position to be successful. But on the same token, you want to make sure you're calling things that the defensive coordinator and their players don't know exactly what's coming. And that's a fine line, because I can come up with a brand new set of plays in every situation every week, but I don't know how fair that would be to our players, that they would have the confidence to go execute those things.
All right, there you go. So start talking about being able to keep the defense, basically keep them guessing, trying to keep them on their heels a little bit. And I don't know if the offense has been able to do that consistently for 4 quarters. We'll see if that is the case versus Florida. Last cut I want to get to it before we go to break is start discussing the opposing quarterback situation. And we don't know if it's going to be DJ Lagway or Aiden Warner. We believe it's probably going to be Aiden Warner. But either way, here's start talking about planning or game planning, I should say, for an opposing quarterback. And, obviously, whether it be an injured QB like DJ Lagway, could be Aiden Warner, but here's him talking about potentially a DJ Lagway going out there hamstrung, if you will.
It kind of varies, I guess, on how was the other quarterback look too. If you're going to play a team with a quarterback who might be hobbled, but if he's not hobbled, man, he can run pretty good and his backup can run really well, then your scheme is one way, where it's like, okay, we need to be cognizant of this. But I think at the end of the day, if a guy's coming in and he's got a hamstring and he may be healthy, he may not be, well, we have to monitor that in real time in game. But ultimately, yeah, that does affect, because if you think, man, we need to have a spy in this game on third down, that affects how you rush. If the mobility doesn't look great and the backup mobility is adequate, but maybe he's not an elite runner, maybe we can do some different things where we don't have to spy. And that allows our guys to rush more. And, I love when Colin and Trey and Alfred and Vernon and all those guys are rushing, Anthony Hill are rushing the quarterback, because that affects timing in the passing game and allows our DBs to play a certain way as well. So it does. But again, we don't ever want to be one dimensional. And as I touched on, I think that's one of the beauties of PK as a play caller, is the change up calls that he makes in a game, I think does affect an offensive team.
All right, there you go, Sark. Talking about planning, or at least game planning, to go up against an injured QB. I think it'll be Aiden Warner. So he may not be injured, but he'll definitely be limited in some of the things he can do. All right, we come back. We'll get into Rod's rant of the day. I'll tell you about the Texans and the Lions. I figured out, I think, how the Texans can address their biggest issue the last 3 weeks, which is pass protection. Seems to be a common trend with my teams these days. But we'll talk about the Texans' pass protection issues and how they can remedy those. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm like Tom Lahorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Let me tell you about my friend and my dentist, Dr. Greg Eckert. He has a great team, and trust me, folks, if you don't have a dentist, even if you do have a dentist, you want to make sure Dr. Eckert is your dentist. He's the best dentist in Austin. Anytime someone asks me if I have a recommendation for a dentist, I say, hey, I got a recommendation for the best dentist in Austin. I owe him a huge debt of gratitude. Initially, I went there for a routine cleaning and a checkup, and their checkups are so thorough indeed that I actually found out that my wisdom teeth were growing in sideways. Actually, they were impacting my molars. It was a disastrous situation. They did not waste any time, folks. They acted quickly, made sure I was educated and informed about the entire process. More importantly, made sure I was comfortable with the entire process. Got the procedure scheduled, got everything done. I was back at work within a couple of days, and my dental health and dental hygiene have never been better thanks to Dr. Eckert and his wonderful team. And they can do the same for you. And hopefully for you, it's not as serious as having all of your wisdom teeth extracted. Hopefully for you, it's something rather routine and something pretty easy. But if it is something very serious, you're in great hands with Dr. Eckert and his team. So hopefully, whether it's general dentistry or teeth whitening or porcelain crowns or dentures or veneers, dental implants, full mouth reconstruction, even root canal therapy, whatever it takes to ensure you're getting the best quality dental care available, that's what Dr. Eckert and his team are all about. Right now, they have the ability to give you a brand new smile in just one day, permanently secure your dental implants, no time spent without teeth. You'll get temporary fixtures until they complete your permanent smile, and you'll smile again with confidence and eat freely without pain or discomfort. It's a lifelike permanent solution. So if you've been told your teeth need to be replaced, don't freak out. Don't get anxious or get depressed about it. Just call Dr. Eckert today to learn about this revolutionary alternative to dentures. It's a brand new smile in just one day. Sounds too good to be true. It's not. It's just Dr. U. It's a complimentary consultation, which means you got nothing to lose, but you got so much to gain, because a confident smile can truly change your life. And don't you want to change your life for the better? Dr. Eckert did it for me. He can do it for you. Give him a call, 512-345-3166. That's 512-345-3166. And if you tell him that you heard it right here on the horn, you'll get a free Zoom whitening with any treatment or procedure you get at Dr. Eckert's office. And you want to make sure you give him a call right now. Use those benefits before the end of the year hits, and you lose those benefits. And you can do that at Dr. Eckert with his team. DrEckert.com, DRUECKERT.com. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. I want to hit this Texans Detroit Lions game a little bit, and I believe it might be the biggest game of the weekend. I mean, it's the primetime game. I think the only other game that I think is, in my opinion, that may be just as interesting or compelling is probably the Washington Pittsburgh game. That's a
it's a good one.
That's a sexy game now, but the rest of them are, I don't know if they're, I mean, it's the NFL, so they're going to be good games. But in terms of the most compelling, I believe it's this one, and then probably that Washington Pittsburgh game. Because Pittsburgh's got a decent defense. Russell Wilson's now got the offense clicking. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. Let's talk about something that's happening with the Detroit Lions. And this is something historic. Well, the way they're playing is damn good and historic, but this is actually a historic trend for the Lions. They are now, how about this? They're one of the best. They're on one of the best cover runs of all time. The Lions are now 40-15 against the spread over the last 55 games since the middle of the 2021 season. They've covered 72, or damn near 73% of their games against the spread in that time span. That is crazy. Like that's pretty wild to be on that kind of streak. So hopefully, I don't even looked at the line here for the Texans. Hopefully, the Texans can find a way to break that streak. But either way, Texans got a Herculean task ahead of them, just trying to find a way to derail this hype train and all the momentum that the Detroit Lions have right now. I know the Kansas City Chiefs are undefeated, but you can make the case that the Detroit Lions are playing a better brand of football than anybody else. And for the Texans, they got to figure out how to protect CJ Stroud and how to do it. I haven't heard about Nico Collins yet. I haven't heard whether he's going to play. Haven't heard.
He did not practice yesterday.
I know.
He has still not been designated to return yet, I believe.
I don't think he's going to play.
I don't think he is either. There is Texans fans who believe that there's still hope because I think they want to believe there's still hope. Now, there's a weird way of the designation to return and being on an injury report, and maybe he's doing something and they don't put it on there. I don't know all the rules behind that, but it would seem at this point that he's not coming back this week. Yes. I would say you have to plan that he's not.
Yeah, it would seem highly unlikely that they would just rush him back and throw him out there without having at least a couple of days of practice. I guess technically you could get today's practice in and tomorrow, but tomorrow's not really a practice. It's just more of a walkthrough. So I'm going to assume Nico Collins isn't playing. And if that's the case, guys, I'm worried about the ability of the Texans offensive line really in pass pro period, because the troubling trend for the Texans is that ever since Nico Collins went out, they have arguably been the worst pass protection unit in all the NFL since he went out. I found this number too because I was doing some research, and I found more proof that Nico Collins' absence, it's not the reason that your pass protection is bad, but his presence was doing a lot to mask your pass protection issues. And I literally remember telling Patrick, because we're both Texans fans, he were on this show after the Texans' first game of the season. I was like, the offensive line's a little leaky. I don't know. I was looking at it, a little leaky, but it didn't matter as much because CJ Stroud and Nico Collins were on such a tear that when CJ Stroud was under pressure and he had the scramble drill, he was scrambling looking for Nico. And if it was third down and there was a quick pressure on him, a pressure under 2.5 seconds, he went and found Nico. That was the number one. He was looking for Nico. In the red zone, looking for Nico. Third and long, no problem, looking for Nico. And the Save Me CJ recipe, which was working just fine for the Texans, even though they were bad on first down and early downs. And they were, at one point earlier this season, leading the NFL in third and long situations, meaning in terms of yards to gain on third down. All right. They had the longest yards to gain on third down in the league at one point. It was all fine because Save Me CJ just needed Freako Nico, and Freako Nico would come to the rescue. And that's why he was leading the NFL in receiving when he went down. But ever since he went down, I think it's more than a coincidence that CJ Stroud has endured the highest pressure rates allowed by an offensive line in the last 3 games of his career since he's been with the Texans. So the last 3 games, he's been under more pressure in the last 3 games than he's been in any 3-game stretch in his career. And it was all when Nico went out. It's not all of a sudden that you think the offensive line just got bad overnight. They didn't. The offensive line's always been what they are right now. It's just now you don't have Freako Nico to help the Save Me CJ, to help with the Save Me CJ recipe and the Save Me CJ method, which Bobby Slowick oftentimes would go to. So if you go look at it, right now CJ Stroud, second in pressure. He's second in terms of pressure rate allowed by Sports Info Solutions. They have him second. Actually, Next Gen Stats has him as the most pressured quarterback in the NFL. Remember, everybody has a different definition of pressure, depending on how close they are to the quarterback, that kind of thing. So either way, he's first or second, depending on what metric you're looking at. Seventh in sack rate among quarterbacks with at least 100 attempts. But since Nico Collins went out, he's been pressured a league high 66 times, and he has been taken down in sacks 16 times, which both lead the league. So since Nico went out, leading the league in sacks allowed and pressures allowed in that time span. And you're like, man, that doesn't have a direct impact on the offensive line. It doesn't, but it has a direct impact on how CJ handles pressure. And Stroud's sacks per pressure rate increased by 6 percentage points during this time span. He just misses his go-to guy. He misses. Here's Nico Collins when he's on the field as opposed to when he's off the field. The completion percentage goes from 69%, nice, when he's on the field, damn near 70%, 57% for CJ Stroud when he's off the field. His catchable percentage goes from 81% to 74%. The ADOT actually increases from when he's on the field. When he's off the field, 7.7 to 8.1. Yards per attempt decreases from 8.4 to 6.2. Yards per trot back go from 7.1 to 5.0 without Nico on the field. Touchdown percentage, it's, man, more than cut in half, 4.9% to 2.4% without Nico. Interception percentage, 1.4, remains relatively stable, 1.4% to 1.2%. But if you have been looking at the way teams play the Texans without Nico, they play more man coverage. They're bolder without Nico out there. And now without Stephon Diggs, even more emboldened, if you will, to play man coverage. When Nico Collins is off the field, they've double their man coverage percentage or rate versus the Texans. When he's on the field, man coverage only 15% of the time. When he's off the field, they go man coverage 30% of the time. And the Lions play man coverage at a top 5 rate in the league. And they don't have enough receivers other than Tank Dell who can consistently beat man-to-man coverage. So what does man-to-man usually accompany? Blitzes. So they're going to blitz you. Why? Because your offensive line can't hold up. They're going to blitz you because they believe that they can play man-to-man on the backside and they don't on the back of it, and they don't believe that any of your receivers can make them pay for it. And so adding Nico Collins to the mix, like I said, it doesn't fix your pass protection issues. No, you got major issues and you ain't going to fix that overnight, but it does mask it for you. And I brought this number up yesterday, Nico Collins, when CJ Stroud targets Nico Collins under pressure, 80% completion percentage and 19 yards per attempt anytime he's under pressure and targets Nico. That's his guy. Anybody else under pressure with a target from CJ Stroud, he's completing 52% of his passes to any other receiver under pressure for 6 yards per attempt. That's his guy. That's his guy on third down. That's his guy when he's under pressure. That's the guy during the scramble drill. That's his guy during the red zone. So like I said, not going to fix your pass protection issues, but if you could get that guy back, CJ Stroud, who's the most pressured quarterback in the NFL, according to Next Gen Stats, and the 17th most pressured quarterback through the first 9 weeks of the season since 2000. And they've had the second most quick pressures, which means a pressure in under 2.5 seconds. The most unblocked pressures, we brought that up, in the league. It means the guy's getting a free shot on your quarterback. And the 9th fastest time to pressure in 2.53 seconds. You ain't going to fix all that over a couple of weeks. Those are systemic issues. Like I said, they actually have existed since week 1. But, man, when you get Nico back, I promise you it'll mask some of those issues. But now you got Detroit to worry about, and I don't think you're getting Nico for Detroit. And, unfortunately, you got to deal with Jared Goff. And I actually like the matchup for the Texans defense because the Texans defense has been playing pretty good against the pass, but nobody can stop Jared Goff right now. Highest completion percentage in any 6-game span in the Super Bowl era, 82% completion percentage. And my favorite Jared Goff stat, because he's got a bunch of them, in the last 6 games while he's been on that tear, he's got more touchdowns, or at least the Detroit Lions have more touchdowns than they have incompletions in that time span. That is a freaky stat. All right, we come back. We got What the Facts. Speaking of stats, we got What the Facts, What the Stats on the other side. Coming right back here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Remember we talked about this in the NFL, that the NFL has had more long field goals than they've had any time in the history of the NFL. They've had now more long field goals, something going on with 50+ yard field goals, never before. It's happening at the college level too. Field goal attempts and field goals made of 50+ yards. They've already been 129 50+ yard field goals in 2024. That's just one shy of last year's total already, which was 23 more than any prior season. Kickers are getting good. Kickers are just getting better.
I know. I feel so bad for Justin Tucker because he was so head and shoulders above everybody in the league for so long.
Yeah.
And now it's like Father Time's finally catching up to him, right?
It's like evolution.
Missed an extra point last night. Father Time's finally catching up to him. And now he just gets to watch as all these people walking into the league now and just dominating. He's like, dude, I was the guy.
I was the only guy doing that.
15 years in the league, the dude. And y'all walk in and make me look like I'm old now. Come on.
No, it's a good point because you're right. that was his unique skills that he could hit those long ones back then. Now everybody's hitting.
He was
long ones.
automatic, could hit the long ones, could do all this stuff, and now it's like, well, yeah, now there's just a bunch of dudes who are starting to get there.
I agree with you, and I mean, how many years has Justin Tucker been in the league now? I guess you could start thinking about retirement. He's been around there, since 2012 or something? Are we talking about 12 years? 12? Is it 12 years? 12 or 13 years, something like that. I want to say he's around there.
Yeah, he's 34 years old.
Okay.
And then, picked up in 2012.
So, I mean, I guess that's not that long for a kicker. Okay, you can go 17, 18, you can go down with 20 years.
But, I mean, now you got these people coming in.
Like these huge legs. You're right. And Father, that's a great point, though. Now he doesn't have that booming leg that he once did just because of Father Time. No, it's great. Oh, I found the stat, too. So, in the NFL, there have been now 100 made field goals this season. Now, this stat is prior to this this weekend. So we haven't had the Thursday night game on this stat, but this does account for up until week 9, so not the start of week 10. There have now been 100 made field goals this season from 50-plus yards. That's the 7th most all-time for any season in its entirety, behind 158 in 2023, 154 in 2022, 120 50-plus yard field goals made in 2021, and it was 107 in 2017. So basically, since 2020, you had 106 in 2020. You had 120 in 2021, 154 in 2022, slight leap, and 158 in 2023. But this year, you're probably going to have close to 200 made field goals of 50-plus yards in the NFL. And then, like I said, then you go to college here, and this is also college stat. Teams are kicking. They've already been 129 50-plus yard field goals in college. That's one shy of last year's season total. Just 2/3 through the season, which is 23 more than any prior season other than that. So it's happening at the NFL level and the college level. Kickers just getting better.
It is. I wonder if there's something to be said of when like parents started realizing how much money kickers make.
Yep.
That they were like, no, parents are just like, no, from a young age, we're getting you. You can play soccer and all this other stuff, but we're also going to have you work on field goals. We're going to have you work on this and put you into it, and just you kind of be bred. You be bred to be this kicker because you can earn a college education. You'll earn NIL money now, and you'll earn money in the NFL if you're good enough. That I think there may be more of a path to it. That before it felt like it was more of an afterthought for most people.
Totally agree with you. That's why and I know the Australian, but kicking academy is a big part of it too. But I think that's a part of it. That now you have kicking academies, so they're like, no, there's a path now. Your kid has got a booming leg. We can turn him into an NFL player, and he can end up earning a scholarship.
No, it's like the funny of parents. It's like, hey, he can throw a ball pretty fast with the left hand. All right, do that well enough. You learn how to do that just well enough. You'll be a millionaire.
No doubt. No, that's a good point. Totally agree with you. Here's a stat from last night's game. I meant to share this one, and I think we ran out of time. How about this? You go look at it. That performance by Jamar Chase, we end up having, 260 something yards receiving versus the Ravens. Jamar Chase's 431 yards receiving this season versus the Ravens in 2 games are the most ever for one player against a single opponent in a season, topping Art Powell's 428 yards for the Raiders versus the Lovely Blue Oilers in 1963. Wow.
Yeah. I just know I'm pretty thrilled. I'm not playing against Jamar Chase in fantasy football this week.
Oh,
I believe he put up 55 points.
You had to be something crazy. I couldn't even imagine. Yeah, with the deep touchdown with 2 60-plus yard touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, come on now.
266 yards and 3 tuds. Yeah, man, he went to work, and they still lost. They lost the game. That is symbolic of the Bengals season.
Yeah,
Joe Burrow has an amazing game, 428 some yards. Jamar Chase goes off 260 yards. Even they set records. They lose. They hold Baltimore to 150 total yards in the first 3 quarters. They lose. Don't know how that keeps happening to the Bengals. They got to figure something out. Right now, their recipe ain't working.
Yeah.
It makes sense, but it ain't working. All right. There you go. There's some factoids, what the facts, what the stats. We come back. We'll get into the game last night. We'll talk about the Ravens and how the Ravens are about to make history. I warned you guys, you may be watching history in the making. That could potentially be the case with the Ravens. We'll talk about that. We'll also get back to Texas, Florida, go behind the burnt orange curtain, continue to preview Texas and Florida. We'll look at that availability report for the Gators and for the Longhorns and talk about the injuries on both sides. We'll also get into some more of the other NFL news, notes, and nuggets. I want to talk about Cowboys a little bit. And other than the Texans versus the Lions, what may be the most intriguing and compelling matchup over the weekend, in my opinion, all that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a freak flag, feel good, fake it till you make it. Ric Flair, woo! Football 512 Friday edition of the Rodcast. And 512 means that's when my co-host, the idea there, Patrick Davis, he plays jams from local bands and artists, very talented human beings that you have a chance to catch live right here in the ATX. Who are we jamming right now, Patrick?
This is Scott Strickland, very talented, great music, plays tonight at Saxon Pub if you want to go check him out. Scott Strickland.
Nice. I like it. But appreciate my man Patrick always hooking us up for 512 Friday. He also does the same with his creativity. Does the same with the topic for the big fat poll of the day. Hooks us up there as well. It's already posted for you at the Horn ATX on X. Patrick, give the folks the topic for the big fat poll of the day.
Big fat poll today. How many points will Texas allow to Florida right now? 10-15 is winning with 58% of the votes. People agreeing with Rod about 10-15. 0-9, actually 20% of the vote. Then 17% for 16-21, and 22 plus gets 5%.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see. Like I said, I don't know how they march down the field. They're going to need explosive plays, or they're going to need the Texas offense to give them a short field, which has been happening way too often in the last two games. So that happened. So that could happen, but that would also mean that the offense did not make the necessary adjustments, and they did not correct the mistakes that we were all hoping they did during the bye week. So I'm gonna assume that's not going to happen. So no short fields, because Texas defense has allowed 10 scoring drives the last 2 games. 2 of them have been longer than 38 yards. 2 of them. Honestly, I know the defense. Listen, you don't hold grudges, and you don't keep score like that on a team. But man, the defense definitely has noticed that they have been working with short fields, have been defending short fiels. Yeah. And the Texas offense, or special teams as well, it's complementary football. If they can keep pinning teams deep, long, at least putting together drives where you can pin a team deep, and so no 3-and-outs, because 3-and-outs usually means bad field position for you. You're losing yardage there. But if you can put together drives long enough, even if they're not scoring, to make sure that teams have to march the length of the field on you, 65, 70 plus yard drives.
Yeah.
How many of those has Texas given up this season? Honestly, they probably have given up like 4 of them, maybe the entire. Probably have given up like 4 drives of longer than 60 yards or something this season.
Yeah,
guys. It hasn't been many.
That UTSA drive, where it was one broken play that really died.
There you go. That's one of them. We know
drive,
Georgia had one.
The Georgia drive with that flea flicker.
Yep. Vandy and Georgia had that one. So that's 3. I mean, it ain't many. We sitting here going off the top of our head like, okay, they ain't gave up many. And they had a couple of games where they didn't give up a touchdown at all. So
and hopefully, Kern now with the bye week and everything, your punting game will be a little bit better than it's been, because we know Kern was hurt. And so you had the backup punter in, and he had some punts that he struggled on when they brought some pressure on him. So he had some of those, and then Kern came back, and then maybe he was still dealing with something, but he had one bad punt. He had a couple good ones and then one really bad one. Really bad so hopefully he comes back and he keeps improving through this season. But if the punting game improves as well, you get that back on special teams, and you're able to pin them back a little bit more. That's where you want to be. Because I mean, I know some people have gotten on the punting game a little bit more, and you go, it was a backup punter for a little bit of it. When it was in that point where you really needed it to be a little bit better, Kern wasn't there, which is unfortunate. But yeah, he's back. I think he's only had really one bad punt since he came back.
Was that 23 yards?
Yeah, somewhere he just missed Vandy. One.
Yeah, and it led to a field goal. It was right before the half. It led to an easy field goal. And that was one of those scores they got on the short field. So yeah, I think the Texas defense we don't talk enough about them. We're taken for granted, and they're underappreciated. I will be the first to say it. If we should be talking about this damn defense every day and how good they are, because they're historically good. CB hit me up and said, "Hey, Rod Babers, shout out to CB at Chris at GB002000. He says, where would you rank the 2024 Texas defense to your 01 defense? In my opinion, the 01 defense is the best defense of the MAC era. I appreciate that, CB. It definitely is one of the. I went back and tracked this one day and just looked at. I looked at scoring defense and total defense and rush D and pass defense. I just looked at kind of the 4 main statistical categories there, and obviously scoring defense being that top category. And if you look at it, we in 2001 we allowed 13.7 points per game. That's a really good number. The 79 defense allowed around a little less than 9 points per game. The 83 defense allowed a little over 9 points per game. If you want to go pre-modern era, 1961 defense, I mean, they allowed like a touchdown per game. 69 defense allowed a little less than 11 points per game or around there. And that's usually about it for like the elite scoring defense. There's still been great defenses. I mean, I went and tracked the best defense in Texas football history. This is in no order. 83, 79, 2001, 05, 61, 69, 77, 2000, 2004, 08, 09. Those are the best defense in Texas football history, in my opinion. Period. Did I miss any of them? Let me know if I missed some. 77, 77, 79, 83, 01, 05, 61, 69, 2000, 04, 08, 09. And if I had to rank them, honestly, if I had to rank, and this defense, by the way, will be top 5. Easy. It'll be top 3 to 5. Right now, they're allowing a little over 11 points per game. They're the number 1 total defense, number 1 pass defense, number 2 scoring defense. They are leading the nation in yards per play allowed. As a matter of fact, they're the only team in the country allowing less than 4 yards per play. They lead the country in explosive plays allowed. Only 13 explosive plays allowed. They've been phenomenal. They really have been. And so I think this defense would be in the top 5 somewhere. I think they'll end the season in the top 5 somewhere. You could make the argument they haven't been tested, but still, to have those types of numbers, I don't give a damn who you're playing up against. You that is a dominant stretch, and we've got enough of a sample size to know now. This is not some aberration. They're consistently this stingy all season long. So yeah, if I had to rank defense, I probably 83 is probably for me at the top. 83, then 79. Maybe 01, 05, just because of the talent you got to put up. Even if they don't have the metrics to measure up statistically with every other defense, the talent, I don't know if there's a more talented defense than the 05 defense in terms of just the amount of NFL caliber players and high level All-American type players you had on that 05 defense. So it's got to be there in the top 5. But you're talking about me and I went modern era. I know 61 and 69 were damn good defenses. But I'm a little reluctant to put them at the top of the rankings just because offenses were not as evolved back then. And offenses are tougher, of course, to defend today than they were in previous years. I think that's just, kind of it's understood when you're having this conversation. But yeah, 77, 2000, I think on there. But I would say 83, 79, 2000, 2001, 2005. 83, 79, 2001, 2005. For me, would probably be my top 4. And honestly, this defense is going to go in there. Like I said, and this is modern era for me. I know somebody who watched 61 and 69 are probably like, what are you talking about, man? The defense was tough. I get it. But that was pre-modern era. So if you want to throw it in there, we could. But even with those in there, I still say this year's defense is going to end up being top 5 all time in the history of Texas football. Compared to my 01 defense, I think it's better than my 01 defense. I don't know about in terms of talent, but in terms of statistically, I mean, I don't know if we were, number 1 total, number 2 scoring, number 1 pass defense. I mean, we were good, but that is freaky. We were number 1 total defense, so I guess we were there. We were number 3 scoring defense, so we were close. We were number 3 pass defense, so we were close. Number 1 pass defense, so we weren't far off. I know 01 defense was nasty. That 01 defense was stingy. That was a stingy D. That was the best defense that I ever played on. So you're right, CB. You can make the argument that was the best defense in the Mac Brown era. We didn't have as much talent as the 05 defense, though. 05 was just, they had way more talent than we did. But we were just a bunch of junkyard dogs on that defense, man. We were, I remember playing on that D. That was, it was something to behold. Like we flew to the football. It was a party at the football all the time. And our secondary was the reinvention of DBU. And so that secondary was me, Ahmad Brooks, Quinn Jammer, Nathan Vasher. That was a nice group of DBs too, because we were versatile. Everybody had played. Nasty Nate had played safety and played nickel. He was safety. Ahmad Brooks had played corner, and they were moving him to safety. Quinn Jammer played safety. They were moving him to corner. If I'm not mistaken, I believe my man DeCurry Pearson was like coming off in a freshman All-American year, or or was about to have one. I think he was coming off of that freshman All-American year. We had some talent in that defensive backfield. So 01 was a really good defense. I would say 05 was just as good, if not better. I know statistically we were, but they won a national title and they had a lot more talent. But this D, I think it's top 5 all time, guys. I do. I think I'm confident saying that. You guys know I don't buy into hyperbole much. The defense is that good. All time great at Texas good. All right. So with that being said, they shouldn't give up more than 10. I'll say that, and they'll give up 20 points to Aiden Warner, but I think they'll end up giving up like 10 to 13 points in the game. All right, let's get to the Horn headlines here. We'll come back and dive into last night's matchup between the Ravens and between the Bengals. We'll discuss that, but first, let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs got a 118-105 win over the Trailblazers last night. 8 Spurs scored double-digit points. The Spurs also announced that star guard Devin Vassell was cleared to return to the court for the first time this season and is expected to return during this homestand. Tonight, the Mavericks face a hot Suns team, and the Rockets head to OKC to take on the Thunder. In college basketball, the Longhorns look to get their first win against Houston Christian tonight. This will be Texas' home opener and the debut of Trey Johnson in the Moody Center. Also tonight, number 1 Kansas will be in action against number 9 North Carolina. And on Saturday, number 4 Houston plays number 11 Auburn, and number 8 Baylor, already with 1 loss, takes on number 16 Arkansas. In college football, Texas takes on Florida and Austin at 11 a.m. kickoff. Then number 3 Georgia faces number 16 Ole Miss. Number 20 Colorado plays Texas Tech in Lubbock. And number 11 Alabama goes up against number 15 LSU in a game that will end the losers' playoff hopes. And in the NFL, the Bengals scored a touchdown late but missed a 2-point conversion, giving the Ravens a 35-34 win. On Sunday, the Cowboys play division rival the Eagles in Dallas, and the Texans take on the red-hot Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. I appreciate those. Man, I just wish that we could get, Ravens, Bengals, a couple of more times a year. The 2 times they've played so far this year, Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, they've combined for over 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns in 2 head-to-head meetings so far this season.
Great.
Combined for over 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns, guys, in just 2 meetings. That is unbelievable. So it was a great game. We said it would be a barn burner. It ended up being just that. Ravens get the win 35-34 over the Bengals after they failed to score on a 2-point conversion that would have put them up, would have given, I believe the Ravens would have had like 30 seconds left and 2 timeouts left to try to go down the field and get a field goal. But I admire the Bengals. The Bengals had it. I mean, that was their game to lose. They were up by 14 points. And how about this stat? The Bengals, they were 33-1 straight up since 2018 when they were up by 14 points or more at any point in the game. They had won 27 straight games when they were up by 14 points at any point in the game. And last night, they couldn't close. They came up short. And to me, that's the Bengals in a nutshell. They're the best bad football team in the NFL. And you're like, Rod, they're not a bad football team. Well, they got a losing record. And Bill Parcells once said, you are what your record says you are. They're a bad football team. Look at the teams they've beaten. Carolina, Las Vegas, the Giants, Cleveland. All those teams are 2-7. They've beaten under bad teams. They can't close versus a good team for some reason. And they have a quarterback playing like a top 3 quarterback in the league right now. Got a wide receiver, Jamar Chase, playing like a top 3 wide receiver in the league right now. They got Trey Henderson, who's playing like a top 3 pass rusher in the league right now. Their defense is top 10. Their offense, in terms of their passing offense, they're one of the best in the league. The running game has not been clicking for them, but they rely on kind of the short passing game to be their running game. But there's no excuse for the Bengals to have a losing record. And last night was another example of it. Got to find a way to win that game, but you got to give credit to Baltimore. And they held Baltimore to less than 100 and around 150 total yards in the first 3 quarters of that game. And in the 4th quarter, the dam broke. And that's where the Cincinnati Bengals were exposed. They allowed 3 long touchdown drives to allow the Ravens basically to take control of the game. And then Cincinnati went down. They went back and forth and ended up coming down to that 2-point conversion, which I still wonder why didn't Joe Burrow target Jamar Chase? Because he ended up throwing to, was it Tanner Hudson, I believe, been an incomplete pass. Jamar Chase was in one-on-one coverage on the outside. And remember, they called a timeout. They went out there for the 2-point conversion, And then they like wanted to see the look, I guess, the defense, and they called a timeout.
Yeah, they didn't like what they saw or whatever it was.
They didn't like what they saw. Because even then, remember, Jamar Chase was still in man coverage, and I was like, "Oh, they definitely going." And then I think Kirk Herbstreit even talked about it. He was like, "Oh man, Jamar Chase 1-on-1. I mean, why not? The dude had 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was unstoppable at the time." And I was thinking, just like the announcers were, they're not going to leave Jamar Chase in 1-on-1. There ain't no damn way. And they did. And they had an inside defender. So I think maybe when they called the timeout, they were thinking, okay, I thought they were thinking, they're going to try to double team Jamar Chase. Let's see if they're going to try to double team that. So next time they put him on the other side of the formation in the slot, and then they motioned him over. I think they motioned him over to say, okay, are they actually double teaming him? What are they doing? Are they actually leaving him 1-on-1? And they didn't. They left him 1-on-1. And when they snapped it, he was still 1-on-1 in man coverage with, I forget the Baltimore Ravens DB, but it doesn't matter who their DB was.
Because it wasn't Kyle Hamilton because he got hurt. And that's the only one that matters.
That's the only one that matters. And he was 1-on-1, and Joe Burrow didn't look. I don't even know if he looked at him, let alone target him. And he played basically inside leverage and played an under technique, which is basically you're jumping underneath routes and you're letting him go over the top. But considering the throws that Joe Burrow was making and the plays that Jamar Chase was making, do you remember that when they ran they ran a smash concept? Smash is when you have 2 receivers, one side twins, and the outside receiver number 1 runs a hitch route, and the inside receiver runs a 7 route, or runs the route to he was running a route to the pylon, and it was 3-on-2. They had 2. The Bengals had 2 receivers. They had 3 defenders, and Joe Burrow threw it in the back corner of the end zone over 2 defenders, and I thought, that wasn't open unless you're an X-Man and you like, I can make that throw. Him and Jamar Chase were on a different level last night. And honestly, in big moments, I remember I heard James Franklin say it recently because everybody kept asking, what's up with you in big games? Because you can't win big games. I've been telling you, he's not a big game coach. He said, you know what? I think because they had 2 goal line situations where they ended up like on the goal line or inside the 5, and they didn't score a touchdown. They got no points out of it multiple times in that game. And they kept asking him, hey, what happened down there? And he said, I got to learn to think, and he shouldn't be, still learning this, but I guess it is a lesson. He said, I need to think players, not plays in that situation. And I've heard Mac Brown say that. I've heard Tom Herman say it. I've heard Steve Sarkisian say it. Mm-hmm. Almost every coach I've heard has said that at one time, like, yeah, I got to think players, not plays in that situation. And I think in that situation for the Bengals, players, not plays, man.
Hey, man, who's in that circle of trust?
Right?
You know who's
Tanner Hudson?
No, Jamar Chase.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
entire circle of trust.
Yeah. Or even, I know they did hold Gesicki on that play. Yeah. Now he got molested on that play.
He got manhandled the whole game.
Yeah, they so I understand why he probably didn't go to him. But Jamar Chase was 1-on-1, and they left him 1-on-1. I'd have been like, I don't give a damn what route you're running. I'm throwing it up to you. And remember, we played the sound of Aaron Rodgers when he threw that one-handed grab in the back of the end zone. Yeah. He was like,
he's in,
man. My guy, when I was 1-on-1, I was like, I'm going to throw it up to my guy. It's my guy. I think that should have been a my guy moment. Should have been like players, not plays. And anyway, but they ended up not converting the 2-point conversion, and so they lost. And now the Bengals, I think mathematically, I know they're probably still in it. I don't know if they got a shot with that division being as tough as it is.
No, because if you win that game, then you fall into you're a game behind the Ravens.
Yep.
So you're right there in it, and then you still think the Steelers have to play all of those. That end of schedule for the Steelers is just so rough that they're going to drop a few of those, and you're going to play them twice in that end of the schedule.
It's starting this weekend, I think, for them, because I watched the game now. It's going to be tougher than we thought. We know that was going to be a tough game. That's a tough game now.
Lord, let me go look at their schedule because
because you're right, because they got to play the NFC East then.
Yeah,
right?
The entire NFC East, all of their NFC East games are.
Then and then they played their division, all their division games.
All their division games.
So
it's
you're
ridiculous.
Right. That's going to be tough. Yeah, I hope they don't unravel totally. They won't, because Mike Tomlin's too good of a coach. But yeah, they got enough of a lead though on Cincinnati where I don't know if it'll matter for Cincy, but Cincy could close that gap if they beat them twice. That's still asking a lot to beat anybody twice, which look how hard it was for the Ravens to beat the Bengals twice. Like, like it is not easy to do in the division.
Yeah, basically your only games that are with below 500 teams are the Bengals and the Browns.
Oh, for Pittsburgh down the stretch
for
and
the rest of the season. Yeah,
and we know the Bengals are. That's not a. They don't operate or play like a below 500 team. They're best bad football team in the NFL.
Yeah, you go Commanders, Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals.
Damn, we thought that Commanders one would be a gimme for you. That is
that
no
was your
longer
last easy one, but it ain't. No, now the Giants is your last easy one.
The Giants are your last easy one.
That was it.
How many wins do they have? 6 now. They got 6.
They are
6 wins. The Pittsburgh Steelers are
6-2,
right?
6-2.
Ooh. So they got to find FOMO. Well, because they'll beat the Giants. So I got to find 3 wins out of that schedule somehow.
Oh, they already beat the 10.
Giants. I was say so that'll make 7.
No, they already beat them.
Oh, they already beat them.
So that's part of the 6. So no, they. So you say if you beat the Browns twice?
Yeah, you got to find. Yeah, so you'll definitely beat the Browns. Well, you should. I would say Jameis Winston's Browns do fight though.
They do. They threw 3 picks
Browns.
last week. So
that's Jameis Winston. He's an idiot savant. I told you the week before that though. What did he do the week before that?
Oh, 3 touchdowns. Hey, I'm throwing 3 of something.
that is Jameis Winston in a nutshell. No, you're right though. So I guess they'd find a couple of more there. Yeah, they got to find 3 wins, I think, other than the Browns wins, to make to guarantee the playoffs for them, a wild card spot. But they got a good start though. They got a good head start for them. In fact, I want to talk a little bit more about that game a little bit later on. But I'll just say this about the Ravens. I pointed this out a couple of weeks ago. And I remember the conversation because Patrick Wynn looked it up and Wynn actually found the factoid for us. Because I was wondering, with Lamar Jackson playing the way he was, I was like, he's going to end up being a front runner for MVP at one point. Well, right now, he's the front runner for MVP, especially after his performance last night. And I said with Derrick Henry, having a resurgence, having his best season, by the way. He may be having his best season, guys, at the age of 30. Like it's a chance that if he keeps playing at this high level, that we'll be talking about him having his best season of his career, or at least one of the top 3 best seasons of his career at 30 years old at running back. And that is considered geriatric at running back, guys. We know. Like, if you're a woman and you're trying to get pregnant and you're like past like 30, they start calling it a geriatric pregnancy. And it's like, I'm just 30. What do you mean? Geriatric. It's like, damn. That's kind of how I feel about running back, right? Like the strippers deal with that too. Like you're at 30, you're geriatric. Essentially, that's what Derrick Henry is, and yet he's having a resurgence in his best season. And Lamar Jackson comes off last night's performance where he ends up throwing 3 touchdowns and has a 142 passer rating, and right now leads the NFL, by the way, in passer rating at 123.2. And he's your front runner for MVP. So like I said, I was like, I think he's going to be a front runner. And now your front runner for Offensive Player of the Year is Derrick Henry. And I said, man, if that ends up being the case, which it is now, you could have, another historical precedent being set, or I just saying a historical situation where you have the NFL MVP and the Offensive Player of the Year in the same backfield. And Patrick pointed out it has happened once, actually happened twice, to the same team and to the same players. It actually happened to the St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf, and it happened in 1999 and in 2001. And in 1999, that was, the great storyline of Kurt Warner coming from the Arena League and being a guy that used to sack groceries and had to come in for Trent Green, who got hurt, and then ended up throwing for 41 touchdown passes and, set all these NFL records. And remember, they traded Marshall Faulk that year. So Marshall Faulk came in and he was a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard receiver in the same season. So they were honestly, a lot of people thought Marshall Faulk probably should have been the MVP and Kurt Warner should have been Offensive Player of the Year, but Kurt Warner ended up receiving 33 of 50 votes. He won the MVP, and I believe, yes, Offensive Player of the Year for Marshall Faulk. He had 26 votes to 18 for Kurt Warner. So he won Offensive Player of the Year, and Kurt Warner won MVP. In 2001, a little bit different, even though Kurt Warner balled out. He had over 4,800 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, and a 101 passer rating. Marshall Faulk had over 2,100 yards from scrimmage and a league-high 21 touchdowns. And then he ended up winning Offensive Player of the Year. The voting was a little bit more split, but Kurt Warner ended up stealing the MVP, 21.5 votes to 17.5 votes. Kurt Warner to Marshall Faulk. And then Marshall Faulk won Offensive Player of the Year, 23 votes to 22 votes. Now, that's the only time in NFL history that the MVP and the Offensive Player of the Year have been on the same team in the same backfield. But we do know that no quarterback has ever won MVP while playing with a player who leads the NFL in yards and touchdowns. And that is potentially what Derrick Henry is about to do, because he leads the NFL currently in yards and touchdowns. And if that is the case, he currently is leading in total yards and touchdowns. If that's the case, that would be a first, because usually, you could make the case that the quarterback is more impactful because, hey, they have more touchdowns or whatever. And with Derrick Henry, it'll be a different monster altogether. There have been 11 instances where a player led their team in yards and touchdowns, in yards from scrimmage and touchdowns in the same season. O.J. Simpson did it in 75. Walter Payton did it in 77. Marcus Allen in 82. Emmitt Smith in 95. Priest Holmes in 2002. Arian Foster in 2010. David Johnson in 2016. Todd Gurley in 2017. Christian McCaffrey in 2019. Jonathan Taylor in 2021. Christian McCaffrey in 2023. Only 4 of those players won Offensive Player of the Year. Christian McCaffrey last year, Todd Gurley in 2017, Priest Holmes in 2002, and Walter Payton in 1977. He won both MVP and Offensive Player of the Year in that season. So those are the only times where you had a player that was able to do both, lead the league, in scrimmage yards and in touchdowns. Only 4 of those won Offensive Player of the Year. So for Derrick Henry, I do think he's going to win right now his own pace to win Offensive Player of the Year. The thing is, can Lamar Jackson win MVP? I think the fatigue factor hurts him more than anything, is they don't want to give it to somebody a third time, second time in a row, all before they're 30 years old. I just don't think they want to do that. So if they have an opportunity to give the MVP to somebody else, I think they will. I think Derrick Henry will win Offensive Player of the Year. But you know what? If he doesn't win, they'll give Lamar Jackson Offensive Player of the Year. Actually, they'll probably give it to him if somebody else wins MVP. But the only players I think right now that can usurp him in the MVP race would be Josh Allen's probably still in it somewhere. I think Jared Goff has had a hell of a 6-game stretch. Maybe he could do it. Jay Daniels got no choice, even though he should be in that discussion. Rookies don't win MVPs. The only one that did it, shout out to my man CB who sent it to us, Jim Brown back in the day. So that won't happen. And Patrick Mahomes, of course, because he's Patrick freaking Mahomes, period. So if they want to give it to Patrick Mahomes because his team is perfect and undefeated, yeah, if that happens, of course, I'll admit, yeah, you got to give it to Patrick Mahomes, probably no matter how bad he's playing. But now he's not playing bad. Ever since they got DeAndre Hopkins, we've seen a different version of Patrick Mahomes. And if that's the case, that'll be more of a solid case for him too. But could have history being made in Baltimore with an MVP campaign by Lamar Jackson, playing better than he played last year. And it's crazy that both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are having career years. One, obviously, Derrick Henry as a runner and Lamar Jackson as a passer having career years. And it's because of this symbiotic relationship that they both have in the backfield. And it's made them, arguably the best offense in the league. All right, we come back. We'll get into Texas football conversation. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian, who was asked about the parting of ways, with the mutual parting of ways with wide receiver Jonte Cook. We'll talk about that. We'll also get into their upcoming opponent. We'll talk about what Texas did in the bye week to improve on all of their I would say all the ways that they were exposed, all the mistakes, self-inflicted wounds that we saw from this team and that Vanderbilt game. We'll talk about that and more coming right back. This is the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Let's talk some Texas, Florida. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian as well. He had his media availability, one of his media availabilities yesterday. And the news broke yesterday that Texas and wide receiver Jonte Cook had agreed to part ways. And here's Sark, because there was some, I think there was some disagreement about the language in the report, whether he was dismissed or whether they agreed to part ways, or whether they mutually agreed to part ways. Here's Sark, who wants to clarify the Jonte Cook report.
Yeah, no, it was mutual between the two of us.
Mutual. Okay. Yeah, it was mutual. I will say this. I've been in a lot of different relationships, business, social, romantic. The truth is, yes, mutual breakups exist on paper, and they exist, in explanations of relationships and how they end. But the truth is, we all know that somebody initiated the breakup usually, and somebody soured on the other side first. It may not necessarily be something that was overt, and it may not be something that was obvious, but one side soured on the other side first. Mutual breakups, they're kind of like breakup sex. Like it's rare. I'm sure it happens, but most of the time, that was someone who either initiated it, soured on the relationship first, or even in some instances sabotaged the relationship first. And so, although we're being told it's a mutual breakup between Jonte Cook and Texas, I'm starting to think maybe the Texas coaches soured on Jonte Cook first. That whatever they saw, they didn't like, and that's why we saw the snaps decrease significantly. All right. I don't know how much they trusted him initially, because they went out and got 3 receivers via the transfer portal. I know they lost 3, but they went out and got 3. That's a big number. Like that's a lot of receivers. And I think for the coaches, and not just saying, hey, that was, they initially didn't want Jonte Cook to be the guy. No, I think they did want Jonte Cook to be the guy. They brought all those other guys in because they lost 3, and they were thinking, hey, we just need options in the wide receiver room. But I don't think they anticipated those options surpassing him so quickly on the depth chart. Guys, we were talking about Jonte Cook in the spring as being one of the only receivers, probably along with DeAndre Moore, that's got experience in the system, knowledge of the system, chemistry with Quinn. None of those other guys coming in, Bowden, Golden, Bond, they didn't have that. They didn't have that advantage of knowing the system, having chemistry with Quinn, having experience in the system. So he actually was in the lead and ahead in this competition at the wide receiver position. So how did he go from being in the lead in the competition at wide receiver with those advantages to being surpassed by all those guys who didn't have those advantages? Because he got surpassed quickly by Bond and Golden. Like almost, man, they had him by spring. It was done. And then during the season by Wingo and Bowden. And then somewhere along the lines, Moore also became a more valuable asset in the wide receiver room. And so I think ultimately he lost out on the competition, and then he didn't see a path to play after that. I think they were disappointed that he didn't respond better to the competition in the room with those advantages. I think they were like, hey, man, you got an advantage. You're supposed to be the guy. You're supposed to be the guy here. And yet that obviously was not the case. And for whatever reason, like I said, maybe stuff behind the scenes. Maybe it was the attitude towards the lack of playing time, or the lack of the being outside the circle of trust, as I call it. But it was clear that once Bowden and Wingo were proven to be in the circle of trust, a freshman had surpassed him, and he was fading out of it, that he had no path to play. He wasn't going to play this year. It wasn't all of a sudden. Now, I will say Amari Nablack got in there in the Vanderbilt game. We hadn't seen him. So maybe there was room for him, but maybe he just wasn't patient enough and willing to wait his turn, because he figured, if they do put me in there now, I'm still the 6th wide receiver now. That's my role, and I don't want to be 6th wide receiver here. and even coming back next year, there's no guarantee because I couldn't beat these guys out this year. How am I going to beat them out again next year? Especially when a lot of them are coming back. How are you going to beat them out? Wingo's coming back. Golden, maybe, is coming back. So I just think he didn't see a path to play.
No, you may
Best
have
to move on.
underappreciated in the room.
Yeah.
And if you feel underappreciated, you want to move on. It's the best probably scenario for whatever reasons there was. It's probably the best scenario for you to move on as opposed to slamming your head into that wall, trying to break through. And, you know, it would be great. And you love it if he was able to break through and he gives you another option. But at the same part, if it wasn't happening yet, it makes sense why he'd say, it's time, you know what? Maybe for both of our sakes, we part now, start planning for what I can plan for my next move, and you can plan for your next move. But
he'll be highly recruited too.
Yeah. 100%. He should be. Yeah. And I think, and for the Texans, it just, you don't want to have that discontent in the locker room. Someone who wants to be playing, feels they should be playing, and isn't getting the opportunity. It's okay.
I agree. You're deep. You're deep there. You're not going to miss him on the field because he wasn't even playing for you on the field, and you are 5 deep at wide receiver. So I think it's for the best. This is what the transfer portal is for. Good for him for moving on, and I think we all wish him the best. I was a little surprised that he couldn't crack the circle of trust, but just shows you how deep Texas is at wide receiver. Okay, can we hit the self-scouting cut 5 here? Sark was asked about the bye week. And, how do you fix the issues? How do you address some of the issues that were plaguing you the last couple of weeks and led to your first loss of the season versus Georgia? Here's what Sark had to say about self-scouting during the bye week.
The thing about us that in self-scouting, when we don't have negative plays, and negative plays, I mean, yes, a guy tackled for a loss or a sack, but also when penalties occur offensively, we are a really efficient offensive football team. And so the one thing that we've really been stressing this week is to move the ball forward. And I know that sounds really simple, but when we don't have those negative plays, we are a very efficient team. We operate almost in first down, second down mode. And that's when we're at our best. That's when our rhythm is at our best. And so that's been the challenge this week, as aggressive as we want to call it, as much, formations, motion shifts we want to do. We want to make sure that our players understand, let's keep moving forward and let's minimize the late grabs that are potential holds. Let's minimize the sacks that maybe we're taking, waiting on a throw down the field instead of maybe finding a check down. Let's minimize the runners, maybe trying to bounce something to look for a run, but let's move forward, because when we do that, we're really efficient. And so I think that's an area that we've kind of looked at and said, okay, we can be better here. I think, in the end, I still think we've been very efficient in the red area, which is something I've been proud of the guys, the work they've put in. We did not have a very good third down day 2 games ago against Georgia. I thought we rebounded with Vanderbilt last week. So there's some things on the offensive side of the ball I feel good about. I think on special teams, one thing that we looked at that we feel very comfortable with is we're playing more young players. And they're producing, and they haven't been perfect, but they're producing. And so we're really trying to be aggressive with our intent of playing more young players on special teams to get them some experience. That's been good. And I would really say the same for the defensive side of the ball. We saw Kobe Black play more in the secondary. We've seen Jelani McDonald playing more in the secondary. Jordan Johnson-Rebel's really coming along. Alex January on the defensive front is really coming along. I've touched on Sadir Mitchell. So I think on the defensive side of the ball, continuing to build our depth. We've been playing defense at a really high level. I don't think you guys ask me enough about it. I don't think I talk enough about our defense for how good they're playing defensive football right now. But we also know, hey, we've been dealt a couple injuries. We've been dealt a guy getting suspended for half of a game, and we're going to have to rely on other people, and we got to keep developing those guys because hopefully we're playing a lot more games the rest of this way.
All right, there's Sark. He's right. We don't talk about that defense enough. That's why I today I had several segments devoted to talking about how good that defense is. We should be raving about how elite the defense has played. All right, last cut here: pass protection, big issue the last couple of weeks, last couple of games for Texas. 11 sacks allowed. It's been, Quinn's been under too much pressure the last couple of games. Here's what Sark had to say about the improvement in pass protection, the focus on pass protection in the bye week.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily that we tweaked it, schematically in a sense. I think the thing that we really needed to drill down on is making sure our communication and that we're all on the same page. We've the last couple of weeks have had too many times, and one time's too many, but if it's two or three now where we have free rushers at the quarterback when the quarterback thinks he's protected, predicated on the amount of rushers that are coming. And that can then in turn spook a quarterback because it's like, I thought I was protected. Now I'm getting hit. And so why is that occurring? And so getting everybody dialed in on the same page from Jake Majors out on the offensive line to incorporating the running backs to incorporating the tight ends, that we are operating in unison as one, I think has probably been some of the biggest keys that we've had to work on this week, as opposed to just, coming up with, I don't want to say a new protection, but adjusting that protection. And so I anticipate us being better. Florida's going to challenge us with that. They're really well coached and they've got some elaborate stuff that they do, exotic stuff that they do. But I think that's the key to the drill. And then when they have one more than we have to block, or that the pressure is coming from a side where the quarterback doesn't have his protection right, that he can either change that protection or he's got to get the ball out in kind of a hot scenario.
There you go. So the three things I'm watching for, though: watch out for the cornerback, boundary cornerback, slot cornerback blitz, double A gap or A gap blitzes of any kind, and delayed rushers and delayed blitzes. Those are the three issues or concepts that have been given the Texas offensive line and pass protection some problems the last couple of weeks. All right, we come back. We'll talk more Texas football on the other side. Also more NFL news, notes, and nuggets. But first, we come back off the record on the other side here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Low One. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into a little off of the record here. I got one story that I want to bring up in particular. So everybody remembers the Saquon Barkley backwards leap, or the basically leaping over defenders backwards he had last week. They call it the backwards hurdle, but he didn't really hurdle them backwards. He literally just jumped, and it was a backwards leap over a defender. He just did it backwards. Usually you do it facing forward. He just did it backwards. So it wasn't kind of a hurdle because he wasn't running. He just it was a spin move, and then in the middle of the spin move, I don't even know. I really want to find the interview because I think they've interviewed him, or he's got a podcast that he's talked about this, and I want to know when he saw the defender that he ended up leaping over backwards. Did he see him initially before he started the spin move, or did he see him at his periphery, or did he just feel him and was like, "No, I know somebody's coming, and I need to leap." It was still probably, I don't know, it may be the most impressive play so far this season. That and the Garrett Wilson one-handed touchdown catch, the one in the end zone, not the one we caught in the catch and run into the end zone. Though I don't know if I've seen two better plays so far this season.
No.
Individual.
No, I was hoping Saquon just saw it on the video.
Oh, now that would be next
the best
level.
Story. You look up and you see the Jumbotron and you see yourself on it, and they're like, "Oh, that guy's about to hit me," and you just jump.
Oh man, that would be phenomenal if that was the case.
I doubt that's it, but man, it would be awesome if it was.
And so I think the folklore and legend around this thing is just growing. According to Bleacher Report, they're saying he got drug tested right after the.
Of course he did.
Hurdle. They drug tested him right after, like not after the play, but after the game. After that game, the NFL was like, "He did what? Okay, get on the phone. Yeah, drug test him. Test him soon. No, don't wait. As soon as he comes off the field, I need you to meet him in the tunnel before he even gets to the locker room. Drug test that dude.
He's got a third eye.
That ain't normal. Yeah, exactly. It's like, what is happening? So they drug tested him. He passed the drug test. But that's how you know. That's the ultimate compliment the NFL can give you.
Yes.
Because remember, DK Metcalf, I think, had one of these too. We had like a crazy, freaky play that he made, and then the NFL drug tested him right. I think he like walked down somebody. Remember that play?
He chased down a guy.
Chased down somebody, and I want to say they drug tested him right after that game. Like, yeah, we need to test you, man. That don't look like that's human. That looks like that's something that humans can't do. Are you superhuman? And I think that's what those players. Are you superhuman? That's basically NFL asking you, are you superhuman?
No,
and you're saying yes, I am.
I think that was Pat McAfee said every time he made a tackle, he got drug tested.
Just because they're like, you're a kicker. What are you
can't tackle people.
No, that's I would love to have done something so freaky. So they're like, I got drug. Like they should be drug testing like Ashton Genty, Travis Hunter. Like I'll be drug testing Travis Hunter all the time. Like Travis Hunter, I need you to be drug tested after every game. I'm sorry. Like what you're doing that means you're superhuman every game.
No,
you're doing something no other human's been able to do in the 100-year plus history of college football. Nobody's been able to do what you're doing right now.
Do you remember when Bijan did the scorpion thing where he hit?
Oh,
and did that? That's one of those ones.
Drug tests.
You'd be like, no, your body ain't supposed to bounce back like that. I mean,
and then he jogged off.
Yeah, like
it wasn't like they didn't have a cart or a stretcher.
I'm good.
He just jogged off. Man, Tom Herman admitted that week. He said, "Oh no, Bijan has passed all the physical tests. He could play." And I think they set him the next week because he didn't want to play. He's like, "Nah, you ain't playing. You're limited. You're limited, man. Because I don't believe a human should come back from what I witnessed and I saw. I thought we all thought the worst.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say it out loud what we all thought. But that's what we were thinking when we saw it and we saw the video. And I still have that picture in my phone of Bijan's.
Yeah.
It looking like basically that. His neck. That basically his neck had broken. It looked like that.
No, it did.
And he just got up and walked away from it.
It's like, all right.
He jogged away from it. No big deal.
And then they say Lagway's going to play this week.
Yeah. That was maybe if he's that kind of freak, he could. Because honestly, we saw that play and Bijan. Like I said, I don't think I've seen anything like it for him to just jog. And he didn't look like he was hurt or anything. I think he was down for a little while on the field.
Yeah.
And then kind of popped up and just jogged on off. It's like, what is that? I think those are Men in Black. You know, Men in Black movies where the alien actually has to reveal that he's an alien, and because something happens, like, oh man,
you think they do the
that
drug
was his
test and they're
alien moment.
like, there's no drugs, but that ain't human.
That ain't human, though. That is not human at all. Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. And maybe we'll see that moment from DJ Lagway. Maybe that moment does come for him in this game. But there you go. That's the freakish moment where Saquon Barkley had to be drug tested by the NFL. And you know what? I support the NFL in this. Drug test that dude. You see freaky stuff like that, drug test him. Because I want to know, too, if that was all natural. All right. Go
did
ahead.
You see? I sent you a picture of this yesterday. Did you see the update on the Drake and DeMar DeRozan beef?
Oh no! What happened?
So then Toronto went to Sacramento to play a game, and the Kings owner wore a "They Not Like Us" shirt.
Wow! So it is real. This beef is
the owner of the Kings wore the shirt to taunt Drake.
Which means somebody has discussed it and explained the beef to him.
100%. And they were like, no, this is a whole thing with Kendrick. He's like, all right, let's do it. He's like, I'm supporting my guy.
Wow.
I want to support
my guy. You know what? They're just helping Drake, unfortunately. They don't realize it. They're just helping
hilarious.
Drake. Yeah, it is. No, it's great. It's great because I think they're trolling Drake. But in the end, this is what Drake wanted. He's getting what he wanted. He just wants people to, this is what he wanted. We're happy that he's getting trolled, but this is also part of his master plan to stay relevant in all, in all forms. So that's wild. The NBA is great like that, though. That's why I love the NBA. The NBA is a petty league.
Yeah.
And it's petty from the owners to the coaches, the players, the fans are even petty. That's why they have the code of conduct for the fans, because they're petty. Everybody associated with the NBA is just petty. And it's great. I mean, Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time, is petty.
Oh,
you know what I mean? That you learn that he's the king of petty. It's like it's something about the NBA that makes you petty and that cultivates petty, and it works. It's great. Just gives you so many great headlines and stuff. That's good stuff. All right, good stuff there, Patrick. All right, we come back. We'll get into some other NFL news, notes, and nuggets. I want to talk about, other than the Texans, which we'll discuss, the other compelling matchup. I think that Washington-Pittsburgh game is going to be pretty interesting. We'll discuss that coming up a little bit later on in the show. Also, we'll talk about the injury or availability report in the SEC, the Thursday injury report, or availability report, I should say, that came out, and the Longhorns and the Florida Gators, and which players are listed there. We'll dive into that. We'll also talk about the Cowboys matchup coming up versus the Eagles. The Cowboys backups, I got to tell you, their history of success and their resume may be a lot more impressive than you remember. We'll get into that, how the backups for the Cowboys perform, because this is definitely what you're going to get in the next month or so for the Cowboys with Dak heading to the IR. We'll dive into that conversation and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a freak flag, feel good, fake it till you make it. Ric Flair, woo! Football 512 Friday edition of the Rodcast. And 512 means that Patrick Davis, my co-host, the Idealionaire on the show, comes up with all the musically themed days of the week. But on a 512 Friday, he plays jams from local bands and artists, very talented human beings that you have a chance to catch live right here in the ATX. Who we jamming right now, Patrick?
This is Extreme Heat, and they're playing Saturday at Saxon Pub, celebrating 50 years of being a band. Have been around in Austin for 50 years.
50 years, man.
Yeah,
it's a long time.
Mid 70s, they formed as a band here in town. Have been playing ever since here, and celebrating 50 years at Saxon Pub on Saturday. So good show there. Check out some Extreme Heat, some Austin history, and some Austin present.
I like that, man. That's crazy. 50 years. That's why I appreciate Patrick always educating us, learning new things, but also expanding our horizons a little bit. He also does that with the Patrick, the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Patrick lets people know what the topic is for the Big Fat Poll of the day.
Big Fat Poll today. How many points will Texas allow to Florida? Also, if you want to throw in your final score predictions there on X, or you want to throw in your final score predictions on the text line as well. But we gave you a few options on there. And right now, 10-15 is winning with 57% of the vote. And then tied right now with 19% is 0-9 and 16-21. And then you got a few more percents there for 22%, 22 plus, sorry, if they would. People think they will score 22 or more points. Think Texas will allow pretty much the most they've allowed to anyone other than Georgia, who that was more defensive of what they allowed. But 10-15 right now, running away with it at 57% of the votes.
Yeah, I just, I think I just don't see how they put together any long scoring drives. Texas is very stingy when it comes to line explosive plays. Matter of fact, nobody is better in the country in terms of explosive plays allowed. Nobody's better in yards per play allowed than Texas. Nobody's better in total defense than the University of Texas. And with a third string quarterback potentially. Now, DJ Lagway may play. I mean, who knows? He's one of those freaks we were just talking about. So if DJ Lagway plays and he can actually, be impactful, and he is 75-80%, then maybe he can make a few plays off schedule for you. He's got a strong arm. But looking at the injury report, and it's something we got to look at too, considering this question. The injury report for this game, the latest injury report or availability report, the one from yesterday, it still has, there's so many guys out for Florida. They got Jakeem Jackson, DB, out. Jason Marshall Jr., DB, out. Eugene Wilson, the third wide receiver, out. Trayon Webb, running back, out. Graham Mertz, the quarterback, starting quarterback initially, he was out. Asa Turner, DB, out. Khalil Jackson, wide receiver, out. Devin Moore, DB, out. Devin Manuel, O-lineman, out. Jamari Lyons, D-lineman, out. The guys that are questionable, DJ Lagway, of course, is questionable. We've talked about him ad nauseum. Montrell Johnson Jr., remember, he's one of the running backs, and they have maybe the best stable of running backs that Texas has faced so far if Montrell Johnson Jr. plays, and he's one of their lead backs. And if he doesn't play, they'll just be down to kind of a two-headed monster at running back. So that would be significant. Elijah Badger is after Eugene Wilson, the third, who I think is their best all-around receiver, but he's been dealing with injuries for the entire season and now had season-ending surgery, I believe, just yesterday. So he's out, but Elijah Badger has stepped in as the most explosive receiver in his stead, averaging over 23 yards per reception, got 24 receptions on the season. So he's a dude. He's a problem. And he may not play because he's questionable here, and he was questionable on the first availability report as well. And then you have DB Dylan Johnson, who's questionable, and Damian George Jr., an offensive lineman, who's questionable. So you look at the guys of significance here. Jason Marshall Jr. is their top cornerback, NFL prospect, out. The player DB that leads him in interceptions, Devin Moore, he's out too. And Asa Turner is actually a DB that's played sparingly with them, and he's out. And then they have another defensive back that's questionable, Dijon Johnson. They're hurting in the secondary right now.
Yeah.
And they're going to have some backups playing in the secondary. And even with the starters playing, they had allowed 33. They were 111th. They allowed 33 20-plus yard passes on the season. So they're 111th in explosive pass plays allowed. If you want to get your mojo back, especially in the passing game, this may be the game to do it. They're 68th in pass defense. They're actually worse in rush defense. They're 88th in rush defense. But I don't think this is my thing about the rush defense. Their rush defense versus Texas rushing offense. I think their rush defense is a little bit below average. 88th, that's below average. But I think Texas run game is just average. I don't think it's extraordinary. I don't think, and I was talking to Fozzie Whitaker and Jeremy Hills about this. Shout out to the Thurman Longhorns crew, Derek Johnson, Alex Okafor, Nick Shuley, and the crew. And I was talking to them because running backs, I'm talking to them, and they believe it. Like, man, the running backs, they need to start breaking more tackles. Like, there's at one point we need the running backs to do something special. They got to break a one-on-one tackle in the hole. They need to make more guys miss. So their running backs, I think they're doing harder on the running backs. But they think you got to make more guys miss, not necessarily get more of a push from the offensive line. And I've talked about it. You're not really getting much of a push from the O-line. If you look at all the numbers so far, and we're 2/3 through the season, rushing yards per game, you're 62nd. Yards per rush, you're 59th. If you're looking at yards after contact per attempt and broken tackles per attempt, outside runs, inside runs, all those numbers, you're just average. Like, you're right around average right? In all those categories. And those are categories, if you're looking at yards before contact, that's average. If you're looking at all of the metrics that tell you if this is an above average run game or an above average run blocking O-line or above average stable of running backs who can create on their own and force missed tackles and create after contact, all the metrics say that they can do that in an average way. Period. Now, this game may show us something different, but I don't know about Texas' average running game going up against their slightly below average rush defense. What I really like is Texas' elite passing game, which all the metrics say it is elite. And I know the last 3 weeks they've struggled with pass protection and some penalties, but still, Texas still has one of the better passing games in the country. I mean, your quarterback at one point was completing 17 to 17. He was in the groove. I thought he had a nice bounce back performance other than the tipped interceptions, but that's still pass protection issues, and maybe Quinn could have handled it better, but I think a lot of that is luck. I thought Quinn had a nice bounce back performance. You'll get Isaiah Bond back, who is your speed demon, right? He's the guy that's going to add the verticality and explosivity back to the offense. And then, of course, you got all the other weapons like Gunnar Helm and Golden and Bond and Bowden and DeAndre Moore's playing really well. That's the strength of your team. And that should be the identity. I just think Sark had to pivot a little bit when they had some pass protection issues. And when Quinn had the injury, that wasn't quite your strength. But if Quinn is healthier and the pass protection issues are fixed, or at least you can resolve most of them, you're going to be relying on the pass game. And your passing offense versus their average pass defense, your elite passing offense, are on the verge of being elite passing offense, versus their average pass defense or below average pass defense because of the injuries that they've had, losing 2 starters in that secondary and allowing 111th most explosive passes via the air. I think I like that matchup. And they've missed 94 tackles. Now, you may say, what about that being in the run game? A lot of those have been in open space where they've missed those tackles. And Texas run game, although it hasn't been consistent, I think Sark has essentially used the quick passing game, the detached screens, the swing screens, the bubble screens, the tunnel screens to the wide receivers. That is his form of the run game now. And that will work, or at least it will expose a bad tackling team more than the traditional running game. So you've got a bad tackling team, and that's probably the way to go with a bad tackling team, because you'll force them to tackle in space a lot more. So I wouldn't be surprised if Texas kind of does the same thing they've been doing to start that game. But I do think there are going to be some shot plays by Sark baked into the game plan, just some shot plays so that he can try to expose that Florida secondary, which, like I said, is missing multiple starters. And even before that, they were prone to giving up big explosive plays. All right. That's the Texas availability report for them. Usual suspects are out. Derek Williams, CJ Baxter, Christian Clark, Velton Gardner all out. 3 running backs, 1 DB. Vernon Broughton is going to be out for the first half. We talked about that with the targeting penalty. Andrew Makuba and Isaiah Bond have been upgraded to probable. So very likely both of those guys are going to play. They also are practicing. The Colton Vasek one is I'll say that's the most mysterious name listed here. He's now doubtful. So I think he's been downgraded actually to doubtful because I believe he was questionable on the last injury report, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know what's going on there. We have not heard anything specific about what's going on with Colton Vasek, but we will keep our he was questionable last time. And so was Makuba. Makuba was questionable, and so was Vasek. Makuba has been upgraded to probable. Vasek has been downgraded to doubtful. And Isaiah Bond was probable before and is still probable. All right.
Yeah. And Vasek may just be precautionary somewhat too. He's a guy that you don't need to have in the game.
No.
You like to have him, but you also need him next season. And you need him to improve, and you probably want him down the stretch of this season to be very healthy. So if you can, when everybody else is healthy, give him a little break to fully recover from whatever, minor thing probably happened in practice. It's not a bad thing.
No, you're right. Yeah, that's another place where they're really deep. Is at the end on the edges, and they're really deep at wide receiver. So even though you had Bond out, safety now, I feel like they're deep there too. When you had Makuba out, he wasn't mid. Derek Williams has been out. Then you have Makuba out. And we thought, oh man, Jelani McDonald being there, there'll be a drop off. That was not a drop off at all. No. Jelani McDonald played well, so they're deep there too. All right, so there you go. That's the availability report for Texas and for Florida heading into Saturday's matchup. Let's get to the Horn headlines here first, then we'll come back. We'll start to dive into that Texans Lions matchup, and I'll tell you why the Cowboys backup quarterback, whoever it's going to be, whether it's going to be Cooper Rush or whether it's going to end up being Trey Lance, I'll tell you the success, at least the recent success of some of the backup quarterbacks for the Cowboys should make you a little bit optimistic. If you're a Cowboys fan, you should be optimistic. I'll share that with you on the other side. But first, let's get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs got a 118-105 win over the Trailblazers last night. 8 Spurs scored in double digits, and the Spurs also announced that star guard Devin Vassell was cleared to return to the court for the first time this season and is expected to return during this homestand. Tonight, the Mavericks face a hot Suns team, and the Rockets head to OKC to take on the Thunder. In college basketball, the Longhorns look to get their first win against Houston Christian tonight. This will be the Texans' home opener and the debut of Trey Johnson in the Moody Center. Also tonight, number 1 Kansas will be in action against number 9 North Carolina on Saturday. Number 4 Houston plays number 11 Auburn, and number 8 Baylor, already with 1 loss, takes on number 16 Arkansas. In college football, Texas takes on Florida in Austin at 11 a.m. Then number 3 Georgia faces number 16 Ole Miss. Number 20 Colorado plays Texas Tech in Lubbock. And number 11 Alabama goes up against number 15 LSU in a game that will end the losers' playoff hopes. And in the NFL, the Bengals scored a touchdown late but missed a 2-point conversion, giving the Ravens a 35-34 win. On Sunday, the Cowboys play division rival the Eagles in Dallas, and the Texans take on the red-hot Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football. And that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. We appreciate those. All right, let me give you this stat about the Cowboys. We know Dak Prescott likely headed to the IR with that hamstring injury. It has not been made official, but the Cowboys have implied it multiple times. So Cooper Rush is likely going to get the start. They have not ruled out Trey Lance playing or both of them playing. Jerry said that on The Fan earlier this week. So if Cooper Rush gets the start, Cooper Rush has made 6 career starts, 5-1 straight up and against the spread. In 1 start in 2021 and 5 starts in 2022. So it's pretty damn good. Dallas has scored at least 17 points in all 6 of those games, scoring 20 or more in 5 of the 6 games. And between Andy Dalton and Cooper Rush, Dallas is now 8-2 straight up and against the spread in their last 10 games using a backup quarterback since the middle of the 2020 season. Winning 4 consecutive games at home in that span. Problem is, at home, they have not been great this season. And the Cowboys haven't played at home since week 6, and that's probably a good thing because they've been historically horrible at home this year. They were the second team last decade. They were the second team last decade to enter a bye after losing by 38 plus points at home with the 2021 Lions. Yeah, trust me. Old Lions teams are not the teams you want to be in a historical stat with. Here are the halftime scores of the Cowboys' last 4 home games. 27-3 to the Lions. They were down 21-6 to the Ravens and down 35-16 to the Saints. Yeah. And down, of course, 27-7 to the Packers. You want to go back all the way to that playoff game. So not good at home, but for some reason, the Cowboys, when they have a backup in there, I think they become more of a conservative. Their approach is different. Now, we'll say they don't have the defense that they had in some of those previous years with a backup playing either. And they don't have the running game. Like when they had the backup in, I think they just became a team that want to run the football. They play really conservative ball control and rely on their defense and special teams to win games. I don't know if they can do that right now because they were essentially a Dak-led offense with one of the worst rushing games, if not the worst rushing game in the NFL. And your defense has been a liability, especially your rush defense this season. So I don't know if you can win with that recipe with a Cooper Rush in there, but we shall see. We'll see what the Cowboys try to do. But history says Cowboys with a backup in there is actually, maybe you should be glass half full. Actually have more success than I initially thought with a backup quarterback in there. Let's jump to the other side, to the Texans, and the Texans match up with the Lions. And here's a crazy, freaky stat about the Lions and how good they've been. And I gave this earlier, but the Lions have more offensive touchdowns than incomplete passes since week 3. Also, since week 3, that was the last time Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't catch a ball thrown his way. He and Jared Goff have connected on 30 straight targets. 30 straight targets. There's not been incomplete. Every time he targets him, it's a completion. Now, Houston actually does have a good pass defense. The Texans are actually right now allowing the fewest yards per pass play in the league, and they've racked up a ton of pressures too. 137 pressures as a result of Will Anderson. I tell you guys, they have the best combo or duo of edge rushers in the league, in my opinion, Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. They really do. And the strange thing about it, Jonathan Grenard, who they let go to the Minnesota, who was their edge rusher, their best edge rusher last year, he's leading the NFL in pressures. He's tied with Aiden Hutchinson. He would lead the NFL in pressures. So, hey, one thing about, D'Amico's teams, he'll keep an edge rusher or two that knows how to wreak havoc and make some plays. But anyway, getting back to
there is the issue. Will Anderson has not practiced this week with an ankle injury because he went out that last game and was kind of banged up in that last game.
He did.
So
they kept putting him out there like situationally too in the last game.
But
maybe they come back, but
he has not practiced so far this week. Kenyon Green also not practiced so far this week, but that one's not as scary. Damian Pierce, of course, not practicing still. He has just been having injuries. He has a groin injury right now. Never good.
It's not good. Yeah, that's like I said, if you have that many injuries, you don't stand a chance against a team that might be, of course, the hottest team right now in the NFL. Speaking of how hot they are, Jared Goff right now, he is on a heater. In the last 6 games, he is completing over 82% of his passes. Like, that is absurd. That is the highest completion percentage, as you probably could have guessed, for any quarterback in any 6-game stretch in the history of the NFL. Well, Super Bowl era. So I would say Super Bowl era. Go back to, so they didn't go before that, but I imagine before that probably would have been tough. But in the modern era, so Super Bowl era, we've never had a quarterback be that efficient throwing the football in a 6-game span. So that's what the Texans got to deal with. They also got to deal with defensively. The Detroit Lions are playing more man coverage than ever before. They're playing man coverage at a top 5 rate. And that's bad for the Texans because the Texans, without Stephon Diggs and without Nico Collins, they don't have enough. If they had Nico and Stephon Diggs, I think it'd be a really good matchup in terms of the Texans offense versus that Lions defense. because they would have enough guys that can beat man-to-man coverage. And then CJ can get the ball out of his hands, and the pass protection wouldn't be as much of a detriment to the offense. Well, now you remove Nico Collins, you remove Stephon Diggs. It's a team that loves to play man-to-man defense and force tight window throws, which they do a really good job of. If you go look at the amount of tight window throws, but for the defenses that force the most tight window throws, the Detroit Lions, number one defense in the NFL at forcing tight window throws. Yeah, because they play so much man-to-man. And tight window throws is if the defender is close within a yard and a half, oh, boom. You know, but that could be a tight window throw. And so they don't play a lot of zone. Zone gives you wide open windows and big windows to throw the football through. So for the Texans, I don't like that because Nico and Stephon Diggs are out. And even though the Detroit Lions, their pass rush took a hit when Aiden Hutchinson went out, I don't know if they're going to play Zadarius Smith, but what they're doing is they're blitzing a lot more on passing downs. So what they're doing is you're starting to see them blitz a lot more on based on third downs and predictable passing downs when they know you're going to throw the football. And for the Texans, you know, that ends up hurting them too, because in the last 3 games, we've seen the Texans pass protection deteriorate. CJ Stroud has been under the most pressure in his career, and they've actually set records for pressure rate allowed in the last 3 games for CJ Stroud. So CJ Stroud is under more pressure than he's ever been in the last 3 games, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it is. I think the pass protection issues for the Texans have existed all season long, and they've been bad in pass protection all season long. All right, but the issue is now CJ Stroud doesn't have the outlet that he once had when he's under pressure. And I went back and found the numbers. You guys know I found the stats to back it up, because that was my eye test was telling me that the offensive line's issues have been there since week 1. They've been leaky, but it's been masked, if you will, by the extreme efficiency and the high level aptitude and adaptability of CJ Stroud and Nico Collins. Nico Collins out. Stephon Diggs is part of that too, but Nico Collins just being able to go win one-on-ones, and that he was the best receiver in the league. All right, best receiver in the league before he got hurt. All right, leading the NFL in receiving yards, and I think it was directly linked to CJ Stroud being put in third and long situations. And when CJ Stroud was under pressure, which he was under pressure, you don't go from, in my opinion, being a solid pass protection unit to being the worst pass protection team in the NFL overnight. Right, you were always that bad, guys. They were always. That's why right now CJ Stroud is the most pressured quarterback in the NFL. Now it did increase, I think, when Nico Collins went down, just because CJ Stroud didn't have answers. He didn't have his solution every time was, I'm just gonna look for Freako Nico. I give it to Nico, I'll be okay under pressure, no matter what it is. And here's the number that I found that backs that up. And I gave you the numbers before, right? Just to prove that this offensive line has been bad the entire time. Texans allow the most pressures and the most sacks on the interior offensive line. All right, we talked about that. We've talked about how even their tackles now aren't playing well. Hell, Hassan Reddick embarrassed Titus Howard in that game against the Jets. He had 8 pressures against Titus Howard in that game. It was the second most by a Jets pass rusher in a season. Will McDonald embarrassed Laremy Tunsil on the other side. Remember, he had 9 pressures against Laremy Tunsil. He had a 20% pressure rate. It was the highest pressure rate, basically that Will McDonald had all season long. Anyway, but so your tackles, you're supposed to be your foundational pieces. They aren't playing well. What's supposed to be your guts of your offensive line, they don't pass protect really well. So I don't know where you start to solve these problems. And now CJ Stroud, among the most pressured quarterbacks in the league, he is the most pressured quarterback in the league, 17th most pressures for any quarterback in the first 9 weeks of the season since 2000. Way too many. And then there's the unblocked pressures. Right? The Texans allow the most unblocked pressures in the NFL. And to me, a lot of that is not necessarily blitzing. Sometimes it's blitzes, delayed blitzes from the second level, but a lot of times it's twists and stunts. And it's miscommunication or confusion, all right, up front with the offensive line when teams run twists and stunts and then a guy comes free. So it's not a time. It's not even about the numbers advantage you have in the blocking scheme or about the pass protection that was set. It's just a miscommunication, and then a free rusher. You're talking about a guy who's got a free hit, just a free shot on your quarterback comes through, and nobody allows more free shots on their quarterback than the Texans. So they most unblocked pressures, and they allow the 9th fastest time to pressure their opposing quarterback, and the 2nd most quick pressures. A quick pressure is a pressure in under 2.5 seconds. They allow the 2nd most quick pressures. And then I found this stat, doing some more research about the Texans and their pass protection issues. Since Nico Collins went down, the Texans have led the league in pressures and sacks allowed. 66 pressures and 16 sacks since week 6. So there are issues you can argue were exacerbated and got worse. I don't think they got worse. I think the pass protection has been really bad. I think CJ Stroud handles it all right worse. I don't think he handles it as well when he doesn't have Nico, when he doesn't have Stephon. That makes the most sense to me. And if you go look, and I brought this up earlier too, you go look at Nico Collins when he is in the game and CJ Stroud is under pressure and he can find Nico. Completion percentage is 80%. Yards per attempt is 19%. 19 yards per attempt. If he's targeting any other player under pressure this season, 52% completion percentage and a 6 yards per attempt. It's not even close. So it's all about CJ's comfort zone and who CJ trusts, who's in his circle of trust. And now without Stephon, I think Tank Dell's the only one that's in his circle of trust. Maybe Dalton Schultz, but Dalton Schultz hasn't proven to be, that effective in these situations right now. So that's really why the Texans are going to be SOL in this matchup against the Detroit Lions. They play a ton of man coverage. By the way, everybody's playing more man coverage against the Texans with Nico out. The man coverage has increased, has doubled. The amount of man coverage against the Texans has doubled since Nico Collins went out. And the zone coverage has decreased exponentially. The blitz percentage has gone up 5 percentage points. The average defenders in the box has gone up by 1 whole defender from 6 to 7. Teams just don't fear your passing game anymore as they once did with Nico, and that makes perfect sense, especially without Stephon in there. They got to find some solutions. Otherwise, this thing could get ugly. This game against Detroit could get ugly, guys. It could, unfortunately, for the Texans. So, and they're embarrassing teams too. You don't want to get embarrassed out there by Detroit Lions. They've admitted now they're trying to embarrass teams. That's the Green Bay defender was talking about. They say, man, they kind of try to embarrass people out there. Yeah, they do. That's exactly what they're trying to do. All right, so there you go. So a little breakdown of the Texans and the Detroit Lions matchup tonight. That'll actually be the primetime game on Sunday night. All right, we come back. I'll talk about another compelling NFL matchup this weekend that I'm looking at, and we'll dive into what some people are saying are going to be the 2 deepest positions in the upcoming draft, and they tie right back to the 40 acres. We'll discuss that when we come back right here on The Horn, featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, coming right back on the Rodcast. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Let's get into some other NFL action happening this weekend. I think the Texans and the Lions are supposed to be the marquee game, but with no Nico Collins, no Tank Dell, even as a Texans fan, I can tell you that's probably not going to live up to the hype. The game that actually may live up to some of the hype could be the Steelers facing the Commanders. We got a 6-win team and a 7-win team there with the Steelers and the Commanders. And for those who haven't been paying attention, you got to start paying attention to the Commanders. We had the discussion earlier today. They may be the second or third best team in the NFC behind Detroit. If you're talking about behind Detroit, who are the best teams right now in the NFC, you probably would put Washington right behind Detroit. I think when Christian McCaffrey gets healthy and the 49ers get healthier, I think the 49ers would be my team. But still, you got to put them in that conversation. And here's why, though. It's the offense, guys, for them that has been absolutely phenomenal. I'll give you a couple of stats about Washington. They're averaging 42.5 yards per offensive drive. That is the highest average for any offense through the first 9 weeks this millennium. Their offense, if you go look at it, since week 5, they rank second in passing yards per game. The defense, actually, I'll take this back. So the defense actually has stepped up too. The issue was, that's why they traded for Marshawn Lattimore, was that Dan Quinn's defense wasn't keeping up their end of the bargain. But lately they've been better. But here, I want to continue with the offense, though. The Washington Commanders, they're and this is the stat that really stands out. They're making it to the red zone on damn near 49% of their drives. That is the highest percent for any team in any season since 2000. First out of 798 possible teams. So keep that in mind. 49% of their drives reach the red zone. That's number one in the NFL since 2000. 61% of their drives score points. That is number one in the NFL since 2000. And if you look at the teams who have over, basically the teams whose drive efficiency, they're looking at the highest drive efficiency rankings, the percentage of drives they get into the red zone. They call it drive efficiency. The teams with the highest rate of their drives that reach the red zone and the highest rate of their drives that score points. So those are drive efficiency metrics. If you're looking at the teams, because right now the Commanders are number one, they're the best team in the last 24 years in those categories. If you go look at the top 10 teams, all right, in drive efficiency through the first 9 weeks of the season, that's where we are, through the first 9 weeks of the season. The Washington Commanders are number one, and they have they're number one in percentage of drives reaching the red zone, 49%. They're in, if you look at yards per drive, I gave you that stat. They're number one in yards per drive since 2000. They're number one in percentage of drives to score. I gave you that stat, 61%. And they're also, so in all those three categories, and all of the top teams in all those three categories over the last 24 years since 2000, here's how they all finished. Because Washington's number one. I'll give you the rest of the top 10 here. Shout out to Sharp Football because they broke this down. 2018 Los Angeles Rams. They were number 2 in percentage of drives into the red zone, number 4 in yards per drive. And they ended up being, I think, in percentage of drives to score 15th since 2000, by the way. All right, through the first 9 weeks of the season. They lost in the Super Bowl. Then next behind them, the New Orleans Saints of 2018. They were 3rd in percentage of drives to reach the red zone. They were 2nd in percentage of drives to score, and they were the number 1 seed in the NFC, and they lost in the NFC title game to the Rams. Remember that was, we all remember that. Controversial in there. The New England Patriots in 2007, undefeated New England Patriots. They also make this list. They're 4th in percentage of drives to reach the red zone. They were 8th in yards per drive and 4th. This is since 2000 through the first 9 weeks. They were 4th in percentage of drives to score. And we all remember that 2007 New England Patriots team lost in the Super Bowl. 2007 Indianapolis Colts, they're 5th in percentage of drives in the red zone, and they were 8th, I think, in percentage of drives to score. 2007 Colts actually lost in divisional round. So they're underachieving. 2006 Colts were also made this list. They were 16% of drives into the red zone, and they were 7th in percentage of drives to score. They were Super Bowl champs, 2006 Colts. Kansas City, 2018, Patrick Mahomes' first year. They were 7th in percentage of drives into the red zone. Remember, this is since 2000, 9 weeks into the season. All right. To 2018, Kansas City Chiefs, 7th among all those teams since 2000 in percentage of drives to the red zone, 5th in yards per drive, and 3rd in percentage of drives to score. And that team lost in the AFC title game. 2011 New Orleans also makes this list in the top 10. They were 8th in percentage of drives into the red zone, and they lost in divisional round. Nice, good. And then there is Arizona in 2008 makes the list, 9th among those teams since 2000 in percentage of drives into the red zone, and they ended up losing in the Super Bowl. Los Angeles Rams in 2021, they made this list. They were 10th in percentage of drives into the red zone, and they ended up being Super Bowl champions. And in 2020, Buffalo Bills made the list. They were 11th in percentage of drives into the red zone, and they ended up being they lost in the AFC Championship game. Just throwing it out there, 50% of the teams in the top 10 in percentage of drives to reach the red zone through week 9 made it to the Super Bowl that year. And you had 1, 2, 3 others that made it to the championship game in their respective conference. Just throwing it out there. I don't even know when this is going to end for Washington, but history would tell you that Washington is about to be in the conversation to be one of the top 2 teams in the NFC this year. And we just had a discussion. Where would you rank them in the NFC right now? Probably top 2. So we'll see if they can. The defense has got to take a step, but them trading for Marshawn Lattimore is big. And since week 5, the Commanders ranked 2nd best in passing yards per game and 6th best in adjusted net yards per attempt allowed. So defense is getting better, and it'll get better with Marshawn Lattimore too. But the offense right now, that's driving this miraculous turnaround season for the Washington Commanders. There you go. But honestly, I like what the Steelers are doing too. Right now, Russell Wilson is having he's having himself a revival of a career. In his 2 starts, he's thrown for 264 and 278 yards with 9.1 and 9.9 yards per pass attempt. It's pretty damn good. And he's got legs. He can run a little bit. He's only made 2 starts, but he's looked really good. Remember, they threw a career high. After throwing a career high 30% of his passes at or behind the line of scrimmage last season, now Russell Wilson, in only 2 games, he's only thrown 14% of his passes at or behind the line of scrimmage. And he's throwing. Remember, he was considered a deep ball savant at one point in his career, but he's attempted a lower rate of passes, 10 plus yards, 15 plus yards, and 20 plus yards than a year ago. So he's not the mad bomber that he once was, but he's not the check down merchant that he had become. He's finding a compromise with the Steelers, a sweet spot. And I think it's worked out for him. We'll see against Washington if he can still have, that kind of steady performance. But he has this is the best the Steelers offense has looked. Honestly, I'm not joking. It's the best it's looked since Big Ben.
Yeah.
Easily the best it's looked since Big Ben.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense that you have a serviceable quarterback who needs to be led more than he wants to admit. And so maybe that Broncos humbled him enough to be able to walk back in and say that I'm not the executive that I wanted to be. He's talking about being the quarterback executive. I'm not that guy. I need to do more of what. And then you get an Arthur Smith, who we know always knew how to coach, just he couldn't handle being a head coach. But as an offensive coordinator, figured it out. He was able to make Ryan Tannehill be a good quarterback for several years. When everybody else had written him off. So I think it's kind of that same mentality of, we just got to get him to do the easy ones to open up our run game a little bit. And then we'll lean on the run some. And then we'll just play hard-nosed football. And Mike Tomlin's going to coach hard-nosed football from the top down. Damn so if we can put all those pieces together, it can work. we just can't have, someone I think helped that Russell Wilson wasn't the leader from the beginning, that he wasn't put in a position to have to be the team leader. Now he's just a player on the team, more of how he was in Seattle, where you had guys like Marshawn and everybody else.
Dynasty.
And then he was just there. And then when he went to Denver, he was supposed to be the guy and lead the franchise, and he just wasn't ready for it. And I know it's not an age thing or maturity or anything else. It's not his personality really to be a guy that everybody can associate with and believe in. So you don't have that. But now he comes in as the quarterback coming in, taking over. The team's already running, already winning games before he gets there. He doesn't have to do anything other than play football. And maybe that's his best situation.
Yep. I think you're right about that. That's a great point, because when he can just come in and doesn't have to set the culture. As long as I don't have to be the culture, as long as I can come in and contribute to the culture, it's good, support it. But if I have to be the culture, which he was later in his Seattle days, and when he got to Denver, didn't work. But I like what you're putting down there. I'm with you. And I think Tomlin would understand that more than anybody. So I'm like, no, I'm the culture here.
Exactly.
You don't need to be the culture, bro. I got the culture. All right, good stuff there. All right, we come back. We'll wrap it up, put it in the oven, and we'll play Who Said That. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world. And based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that. We'll play it when we come back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis and Lifetime Long One. Rod Davis coming back on Horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a 512 Friday. You know what that means. That means my co-host, the Idealionaire, Patrick Davis, plays jams from local bands and artists, very talented human beings that you have a chance to catch live right here in the ATX. Who are we jamming right now, Patrick?
There's a band called Slurp the World, and they're playing tonight at Empire Control Room.
All right, there you go. Appreciate Patrick hooking us up there. He also hooks us up with the topic for the Big Fat Poll today that is already posted at the Horn ATX on X. How many points will Texas allow to Florida? And right now, 59% of you say between 10 to 15 points. Another 19% of you say between 16 and 21 points. Go there and vote at the Horn ATX account on X for the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. All right, time to play Who Said That? That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that.
Yeah, the middle of the season is always critical that way. Like Bill Belichick talks about the middle eight in a football game. I mean, there's a middle eight in a season too. You could you could break it down, that way. 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, those are important games. The only joke I know is, why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are big games.
Wow. And did some reporter not know the answer?
I think everybody's just waiting for him to say it.
That
was the worst delivery of a joke in the history
it was terrible. That's an old dad joke right there. That's a dad joke from like the 90s.
That's like a kid joke.
It is. It was like a dad joke to a kid joke, but yeah.
Yeah, that is that delivering the joke of that one, just dead face the entire time.
The entire time. Yeah.
And I guess
that ain't his best work. I will say usually I enjoy my Jim Harbaugh quips. That is not one of his best ones, but that was Jim Harbaugh there in our Who Said That segment. I haven't been keeping up with the Chargers. I know they're not bad. I don't know. I haven't been watching the Chargers.
Yeah, they're right there in the middle. They're playing okay football, but nothing special. And they had that Herbert dealing with those injuries. Kind of nagging injuries, and
I know they were running the football really well.
They were J.K. Dobbins was running the football really well, but that was probably the problem they had too. Is they didn't have a lot of running backs. They kind of grabbed, John Harbaugh's old leftovers with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. And Gus Edwards like 31 or something, like way past his prime. That was supposed to be the starter. You're like Gus Edwards was never really even supposed to be a starter in the league.
No.
And then you get an older Gus Edwards. But J.K. Dobbins has been healthy and been playing really well. So that's been an interesting pickup for them. But yeah, I think they need to add a little bit more in that running game, and then it'll turn more into Harbaugh ball.
Yeah, it'll be a big draft for Harbaugh ball this year. Now he's had 1 year kind of work in that Harbaugh culture. And everybody knows what Harbaugh ball is about. It's about bully ball. And that's the kind of ball that he wants to play. You got to build up to that a little bit. All right. Thanks, Patrick, for everything you do, brother. Great week of shows. Appreciate all of your hard work. We appreciate all you guys out there for watching and for listening. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. We'll be talking about it right here on the Rodcast. We love you guys. We mean that. Take care of yourselves. But more importantly, take care of each other. And until next time, hook 'em. And peace.